across the world, scattered across deserts, jungles, and even beneath the ocean, stand colossal structures that defy time, and sometimes even logic. Towering stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, perfectly aligned pillars carved with microscopic precision, and vast cities planned with astronomical knowledge far beyond their era. These are not the ruins of ordinary civilizations. They are the ancient megastructures scientists can't fully explain. From the frozen plains of Siberia to the sun-scorched pyramids of Egypt, each site carries an unsolved riddle, as if the past left behind a series of puzzles meant for us to uncover. Some believe these are remnants of lost civilizations more advanced than we imagine, while others suspect secrets of forgotten technology or even extraterrestrial influence. Who built them? How were they constructed without modern machines? And perhaps most mysteriously, why were they made at all? Before we begin our journey, let us know in the comments below where in the world you're watching from and what time it is there now. Now, join us as we uncover the mysteries of the ancient megastructures discovered across the globe. The Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt has always been one of the most astonishing creations on Earth, not only because of its incredible size, but also because of the mystery surrounding how it was built. It stands as a silent monument to human determination and skill, yet even after thousands of years it still leaves modern engineers and scientists puzzled. When people first approach the pyramid, they often find themselves speechless, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the structure. It rises proudly from the golden desert, massive and immovable, almost as if it had grown naturally from the sand instead of being placed there stone by human hands. But make no mistake, this wonder was crafted by people, and the more one learns about it, the stranger and more fascinating the story becomes. The pyramid was built using millions of stone blocks, and these were not small bricks that could be carried easily by hand. Many of the blocks weighed several tons each, with some reaching weights of more than 70 tons. Imagine trying to move a stone that heavy without cranes, trucks, or any of the machines we rely on today. The builders of ancient Egypt had nothing more than wooden sledges, ropes, and human strength. Yet somehow they managed to lift, drag, and place these massive stones with a precision so fine that even today's technology struggles to explain it. The blocks were cut with straight edges and carefully fitted together. Some of the joints are so close that it is said you cannot even slip a single piece of paper between them. When people run their fingers along the seams of the stones, it feels almost like touching a single piece of smooth rock instead of two blocks placed side by side. The location of the pyramid is itself a source of wonder. It was not randomly placed. The ancient Egyptians chose a spot on the Giza Plateau, a stretch of solid limestone bedrock just outside Cairo. This plateau provided a stable foundation, essential for carrying the unimaginable weight of the pyramid. Engineers estimate the pyramid weighs more than 6 million tons in total. To put that into perspective, imagine trying to balance the weight of hundreds of thousands of fully loaded trucks in one place without having the ground sink or crumble beneath it. Yet the pyramid stands firm, unshaken by earthquakes or erosion for thousands of years. This careful planning shows that the builders were not just workers following orders, they were master engineers with a deep understanding of mathematics, physics, and the natural world. The precision of the pyramid's alignment is another aspect that continues to baffle modern experts. The four sides of the Great Pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. This alignment is so precise that it deviates by only a fraction of a degree. In fact, even with all our satellite technology, GPS systems and laser-guided instruments, it is difficult for modern builders to match that level of accuracy on a structure of such scale. How did people more than 4,000 years ago achieve such flawless orientation without modern tools? Did they use the stars? Did they rely on the shadow of the sun? Or did they possess some other method that has since been lost to history? These questions fuel endless debates among archaeologists, historians, and engineers. Inside the pyramid lies another set of marvels. The structure is not a solid block of stone. It contains carefully constructed chambers, passageways, and shafts that run deep into its core. The most famous of these are the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. The king's chamber, built entirely out of massive granite blocks, transported from quarries more than 500 miles away, contains a large stone sarcophagus. The granite blocks of this chamber are so heavy, some weighing up to 70 tons, that even today with cranes and advanced machines it would be considered a serious challenge to lift and place them. Yet the ancient Egyptians managed it with apparent ease, arranging them in perfect balance to withstand the weight of the pyramid above. The Grand Gallery is another breathtaking feature, a long sloping corridor that stretches upward like a giant stone tunnel. Its walls rise at an angle and are made of blocks fitted so precisely that the entire gallery has stood unchanged for millennia. Walking inside, visitors often describe the feeling as humbling, as if they have stepped into the heart of an ancient machine or into a temple that holds secrets no one fully understands. Light glimmers faintly off the smooth surfaces of the stone, and the silence inside is almost overwhelming, broken only by the sound of footsteps echoing off the walls. Transporting the materials used for the pyramid was a feat of its own. Many of the limestone blocks came from nearby quarries, but the granite used for the king's chamber came from Aswan, a city more than 500 miles to the south. This means the builders had to move these enormous stones across deserts and along the Nile River, then haul them up ramps to place them high in the pyramid structure. Imagine the logistics of organising thousands of workers to move these blocks without engines or steel cables. Some theories suggest that the Egyptians used wooden sledges lubricated with water to reduce friction as they dragged the stones across the sand. Others propose that they built massive earthen ramps to slowly raise the stones, adding layers as the pyramid grew higher. Yet none of these theories fully explains how such perfect results were achieved. Even if ramps were used, building and maintaining them would have required as much effort as constructing the pyramid itself. The Great Pyramid originally shone with dazzling brilliance. Its surface was once covered with polished Tura limestone casing stones, cut so finely that they reflected the sunlight like a mirror. Under the scorching Egyptian sun, the pyramid would have gleamed like a giant beacon of light visible for miles around. Ancient travellers described it as shining so brightly that it seemed to glow with its own inner fire. Sadly, most of these casing stones were removed over the centuries, reused for other building projects, leaving behind the rougher core blocks that we see today. But when one imagines the pyramid in its original form, glittering white against the desert sky, it becomes clear why it was considered not just a tomb, but a symbol of divine power. The mathematics behind the pyramid's dimensions add yet another layer of mystery. The length of its base sides and the height of the pyramid seem to encode ratios connected to the number pi and the golden ratio, mathematical constants that appear in nature, art, and geometry. Whether this was intentional or simply a coincidence is hotly debated, but many believe that the builders had knowledge of advanced mathematical principles long before such ideas were officially recorded in history. The pyramid's proportions seem to hold secrets about geometry, astronomy, and even the size of the Earth itself. Some researchers have even argued that the pyramid could not only serve as a tomb, but also as a kind of giant observatory or calendar, its angles and passages aligned with important celestial events like solstices and star risings. The workforce required to build the Great Pyramid is another subject surrounded by fascination. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus claim that 100,000 slaves built the pyramid over a period of 20 years, but modern archaeology has shown a different story. Excavations near Giza have uncovered the remains of workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, and even hospitals, suggesting that the builders were not slaves but rather a large organised workforce of skilled labourers, engineers, stonecutters, and support staff. They were well fed, housed in barracks, and supported by an entire system of cooks, brewers, and doctors. This shows that building the pyramid was not just a project of forced labour, but rather a national effort that united thousands of people in the service of their king, Pharaoh Khufu, who ordered the pyramid to be built around 2,600 years before the birth of Christ. The pyramid's endurance through time is remarkable. For more than 4,000 years it has stood as the tallest man-made structure in the world, only surpassed in height by modern skyscrapers in the 19th century. Despite wars, earthquakes, and weathering, it still rises proudly above the desert sands. Its survival is partly due to the sheer mass of stone used, but also because of the extraordinary craftsmanship of its builders. The base of the pyramid is level to within a few centimetres, an achievement that still astonishes modern surveyors. Even after centuries of erosion, the structure remains geometrically precise, its sides forming almost perfect triangles pointing to the sky. Legends have grown around the pyramid over the centuries. Some say it was built with the help of gods, while others claim that it hides secret chambers containing treasures or knowledge from a lost civilization. Explorers and adventurers from around the world have journeyed to Egypt hoping to unlock its secrets. In the 19th and 20th centuries, new tunnels and chambers were discovered, yet the pyramid still holds mysteries. Modern scanning technology has revealed hidden voids within the structure, large spaces whose purpose is not yet understood. Are they simply architectural features to reduce pressure on certain chambers, or do they conceal hidden rooms waiting to be explored? No one knows for certain, and this keeps the sense of wonder alive. When one stands at the base of the Great Pyramid, craning their neck to look upward, it is impossible not to feel a connection to the people who built it. Imagine the thousands of workers dragging stones under the burning sun, the engineers calculating angles with simple tools, the overseers organising food and water for the labourers, the priests chanting prayers as the structure slowly rose higher and higher. Every stone placed was part of a vision of eternity, meant to honour Pharaoh Khufu and ensure his place among the gods. The pyramid was more than just a tomb. It was a bridge between heaven and earth, a monument meant to last forever. Even today, the Great Pyramid challenges the imagination. When modern builders are asked to recreate such a structure using only the tools and techniques available to the ancient Egyptians, most admit it would be nearly impossible. The level of organisation, the manpower, the resources, and the sheer determination required would be staggering. And yet, somehow, the people of ancient Egypt achieved it, leaving behind a masterpiece that still inspires awe. Stonehenge, the circle of great stones that stands on the wide Salisbury Plain in England, is one of the most mysterious and fascinating monuments ever built by human hands. When people first set eyes on it, they see enormous upright stones, some weighing as much as huge trucks, carefully placed in a circular arrangement. Some of these stones are joined by horizontal stones laid across their tops, forming giant stone doorways that seem to lead into another world. They rise from the grassy plain with quiet majesty, weathered by thousands of years of wind, rain and sun, and they carry with them the weight of untold secrets. No matter how much scholars and archaeologists study them, questions still remain unanswered. Why was it built? Who were the people who erected it? And what deep meaning did the alignment of its stones with the movements of the sun and stars hold for them? To truly appreciate the mystery of Stonehenge, one must imagine life thousands of years ago. Around 4,500 years in the past, long before metal tools were widely used in Britain, long before the written word came to the island, communities of farmers, herders, and builders managed to shape the land in ways that still astonish us today. These were not primitive people, as is sometimes assumed. They were skilled in observation, clever in design, and astonishingly persistent in carrying out projects that demanded generations of effort. In their time, building with stone was no simple task, yet somehow they planned and created a monument that continues to puzzle even the most advanced engineers of today. The stones themselves are of two main types. The smaller ones, known as blue stones, came from the distant hills of Wales, over 150 miles away. These stones are not small by ordinary standards, for many of them weigh several tons, but they are dwarfed by the larger stones known as sarsens, which were brought from quarries about 20 miles from the site. The sarsens are enormous blocks, some standing more than 20 feet tall and weighing up to 40 tons. How these stones were moved across such distances in an age without trucks, cranes, or even wheels strong enough to carry such weight is one of the great puzzles. Some believe they were dragged over land on wooden sledges, pulled by teams of people and perhaps animals, while others think they may have been floated part of the way on rafts along rivers. Either way, the task would have required thousands of hands, endless determination, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Once the stones arrived on site, the builders faced the challenge of arranging them with astonishing precision. They dug deep pits to hold the upright stones, carefully setting them so that they stood firm. They then lifted massive lintels, long stones meant to rest across the tops of the uprights, into place. Imagine the sheer effort. people using ropes, timber frameworks, and sheer muscle to heave stones weighing more than 10 tons into the air and position them so securely that they remain standing even after thousands of years. Even more astonishing is that the lintels were shaped to fit snugly onto the uprights, with carefully cut joints like those found in wooden furniture, showing that the builders understood engineering in a way few would have expected from their time. But Stonehenge is not simply a circle of stones. Its builders were also astronomers of a kind, observers of the skies. The layout of the stones shows alignments with important celestial events. The most famous of these is the midsummer sunrise. On the morning of the longest day of the year, the sun rises in the distance and its first rays shine directly through the heart of Stonehenge, aligning with what is called the heel stone, a single upright that stands apart from the main circle. To stand there on that morning, watching the sun climb into the sky in perfect harmony with the monument, is to feel connected to something far older than memory. It suggests that the builders had a deep awareness of the cycles of nature, the turning of the seasons and the movements of heavenly bodies. Yet the purpose of these alignments remains debated. Some argue that Stonehenge was built as a kind of temple to the sun and the moon, a sacred place where rituals were held to mark the changing seasons. For people living in an agricultural society, knowing when to plant crops and when to harvest them could mean the difference between life and starvation. The alignment of stones with solstices and possibly lunar events may have been a way to keep track of time in a world without written calendars. Others believe it was more than just a practical tool. Perhaps it was a place of worship, a stage upon which great ceremonies were performed to honour gods, ancestors, or the forces of nature itself. The sheer scale of the monument suggests that it was meant to impress, to awe, to serve as a gathering place for hundreds, if not thousands, of people. But Stonehenge also carries evidence that it may have been a place of burial. Excavations have revealed cremated human remains in some of the pits surrounding the stones, dating back thousands of years. These discoveries suggest that it was not only a place for watching the heavens, but also for honouring the dead. Perhaps the people believed that by aligning their dead with the cycles of the sun and the moon, they were ensuring their spirits travelled safely to another realm. In this sense, Stonehenge might have served as a gateway between the world of the living and the world beyond, a bridge between earth and sky. The mystery deepens when one considers that Stonehenge was not built all at once. Instead, it took shape over many centuries, with different generations adding new features, rearranging stones and reshaping the monument. The first simple circle of wooden posts was raised around 5,000 years ago. Later came earthworks, ditches, and then the great stones themselves, added over many centuries. This means that the purpose of Stonehenge may have shifted over time. What one generation saw as a temple, another may have seen as a cemetery, and yet another as a cosmic observatory. It was a living monument, evolving with the people who tended it, and carrying new meanings as centuries passed. Legends grew around Stonehenge as well, long after its original builders were gone. Medieval writers claimed it had been built by giants, who brought the stones from distant lands. Another story told that the magician Merlin, famous in tales of King Arthur, had used his powers to move the stones from Ireland to their current home. Such legends may seem fanciful, but they reflect a truth. The monument was so impressive that later people could hardly imagine ordinary humans building it without magical help. Even in modern times, standing before those stones inspires awe. They seem to belong to another world, as if they were placed there by forces beyond ordinary human strength. The debate about its purpose continues among scholars. Some suggest it was primarily a healing centre, pointing to the blue stones, which were thought in ancient times to have special properties. People may have travelled long distances to be cured, believing the stones held power. Others emphasise its role as a gathering place, a centre for communities scattered across the land to come together for rituals, feasts and celebrations. Evidence of animal bones found nearby suggests great feasts took place, perhaps during solstices, when people would gather to mark the turning points of the year. Still others believe it was connected to ancestor worship, a place where the living could connect with the spirits of those who came before. The sheer effort invested in Stonehenge tells us something important about the people who built it. They must have believed it was worth every drop of sweat, every year of labour, every life devoted to moving and raising the stones. In a world without machines, where survival was often difficult, to devote such energy to building suggests that Stonehenge held immense importance. It was not simply a monument but a central part of their culture, their identity, their relationship with the cosmos. Even today, people are drawn to Stonehenge in ways that echo its ancient past. On the morning of the midsummer solstice, thousands gather to watch the sun rise over the Heelstone, just as people did thousands of years ago. They come not only out of curiosity, but out of a deep desire to feel connected to something larger than themselves. The stones, silent and weathered, still speak to us in ways we cannot fully explain. They are reminders of human ingenuity, of mystery, and of the timeless quest to understand our place in the universe. The debate about its exact purpose, whether it was a calendar, a temple, a cemetery, a healing site, or all of these at once, may never be settled. But perhaps that is part of its power. Stonehenge refuses to give up all its secrets. It invites us to wonder, to imagine, to stand in awe of what humans are capable of when driven by vision and faith in something greater. The great circle of stones, aligned with the heavens yet rooted firmly in the earth, remains one of humanity's most enduring enigmas, a puzzle carved in rock that has stood for nearly 5 millennia and will likely stand for many more. High in the Andes Mountains of Peru lies a place that seems almost impossible to believe was made by human hands. This place is called Sacsayhuaman, and it stands just above the ancient city of Cusco, which was once the beating heart of the mighty Inca Empire. The most striking thing about Sacsayhuaman is not just its sheer size, but the way its walls were built. The massive stone blocks, some taller than a person, some heavier than a car or even a truck, were fitted together so tightly and with such precision that not a single drop of mortar was needed to hold them in place. Even more astonishing, the stones were cut and joined in such a way that one could not even slip the thinnest blade of grass or a single sheet of paper into the gaps between them. The walls stand like a silent puzzle, carved by hands of a civilization that seemed to know secrets lost to time. The stone blocks themselves are not ordinary stones. Some are enormous, weighing many tons, and yet they were moved, shaped, and placed in ways that remain difficult to understand even today. The largest stones in the fortress are said to weigh as much as 300 tons, though no one truly knows the exact measurement. What we do know is that these stones were brought from quarries miles away from the site, dragged and hauled over uneven mountain terrain, up steep inclines, across valleys, and somehow raised into walls that still stand after many centuries. The fact that they are still there, standing firm against earthquakes, rain, wind, and centuries of weather, shows how incredibly skilled the builders were. Modern engineers often admit that even with cranes, machinery, and modern tools, it would be extremely hard to recreate what the Incas achieved with nothing but human power, rope, wood, and knowledge passed down through generations. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are not straight lines of neat bricks. Instead, they are made of stones cut into irregular shapes, like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle. Each block has its own unique form, and yet it fits perfectly against the blocks around it. Some stones have more than a dozen sides, yet every side touches its neighbour with flawless precision. This style of construction is often called Cyclopean masonry, because the stones are so huge and the effort so vast that ancient people who saw them believed only giants or mythical beings, like the one-eyed Cyclopes of Greek legend, could have built them. The Inca builders, however, needed no giants, only their skill, their determination, and perhaps knowledge of techniques that are now forgotten. Walking along the walls, one can see 3 great terraces that rise like giant steps. Each terrace is made of these immense stones, fitted together in lines that curve and zigzag. The zigzagging pattern was not just decorative, it made the walls stronger, able to resist earthquakes that often shook the Andes. The Incas lived in a region where the ground trembled with regular force, yet their structures often survived quakes that toppled Spanish buildings later on. The builders seem to know exactly how to balance strength and beauty. The walls of Sacsayhuaman look like they are alive, like the stones themselves are breathing, leaning into each other with an invisible bond. Legends among the local people tell stories about how the stones were moved. Some say the stones walked themselves, guided by the power of sacred chants. Others believe that the Incas knew secrets about softening stone, making it pliable like clay so it could be shaped before hardening again. There is no evidence for such methods, but the sheer precision of the work inspires wonder and invites mystery. Archaeologists think the stones were hammered and shaped with harder stones, a process that would have taken countless hours and immense patience. The idea of hundreds or even thousands of workers carefully chipping away at massive rocks until they fit together like puzzle pieces paints a picture of devotion to something greater than just building a fortress. It suggests that this place had deep meaning, possibly spiritual as well as practical. Sacsayhuaman was not only a military stronghold, it was also a place of ceremony and power. From the high walls one can look down on Cusco, laid out below in the shape of a puma, the sacred animal of strength and courage. According to many, Sacsayhuaman formed the head of the puma, while the body stretched across the city. This symbolic design shows how deeply the Incas tied their lives to the land and to the creatures they held sacred. To them, building was never just about shelter or defense. It was about harmony with nature, with the mountains, and with the cosmos. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they were astonished by Sacsayhuaman. They marvelled at the walls and could not understand how such construction was possible without iron tools, wheels, or beasts of burden like horses and oxen, which the Incas did not have before the Europeans came. The Spanish themselves tried to dismantle parts of the fortress to use the stones for their own buildings in Cusco. Many of the smaller stones were carried away and can still be seen today in the walls of churches and colonial houses. But the larger stones, too heavy to move, remained in place. Those stones still stand, unmoved, as if defying time itself. They are like the bones of the earth, showing the strength of the ancient builders. Imagine standing at Sacsayhuaman during the great Inca festival of Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun, which is still celebrated today every year in June during the winter solstice of the southern hemisphere. Thousands of people would gather at this very site dressed in colourful garments, carrying offerings, singing songs and performing dances to honour Inti, the sun god. The high priests would perform rituals, the emperor would appear adorned in golden ornaments, and the air would be filled with music and chants. The massive stone walls would echo with the sounds of drums and flutes, while the sun shone brightly over the Andes. The fortress was not just a military place, it was a sacred space where the Incas connected their lives to the heavens above. The sheer scale of Sacsayhuaman can make anyone feel small. Standing beside stones taller than a person, wider than a doorway, and heavier than entire vehicles, one cannot help but wonder how many hands, how many lives, and how much time it took to bring such a structure into being. Some stones are shaped in curves that wrap around the corners, others are so perfectly matched that the seam between them is invisible. Even erosion from centuries of wind and rain has not opened gaps between the stones. It is as though the builders foresaw eternity and built with that in mind. The site itself covers a vast area, with its terraces stretching across the hillside. It once included towers, storehouses, and open plazas. The central open space was large enough to hold thousands of people at once, making it perfect for festivals and gatherings. Today, much of the upper structure has been lost, destroyed during the Spanish conquest, or taken apart for other uses, but the foundations and walls remain. They give a glimpse of the grandeur that once was, whispering of a time when the Incas ruled the Andes with power and vision. Archaeologists have studied the site for many years, yet many questions remain. How exactly were the stones transported? How were they lifted into place? What tools were used to achieve such precision? Why were the stones cut in such irregular shapes instead of neat rectangles? Some believe the irregular design helped the walls withstand earthquakes, but others suggest it also had symbolic meaning, representing the harmony of diversity and the strength of unity. The Incas often thought in terms of duality and balance, and perhaps the walls themselves carried spiritual lessons in their very shapes. As the sun sets over Sacsayhuaman, the stones glow with golden light, their surfaces shining as though alive. The mountains in the distance turn purple, the air grows cool, and silence settles over the ancient fortress. One can almost imagine the voices of Inca workers ringing in the air, the sound of hammers striking stone, the chants of priests, the laughter of children running through the plazas, the cries of soldiers preparing for defense. The place is alive with memory, each stone a witness to centuries of human effort, triumph, and sorrow. The Spanish chroniclers who wrote about Sacsayhuaman were struck by its magnificence. Some said it was the work of demons because they could not believe humans without advanced tools could have created it. Others admitted that nothing in Europe compared to it. Even today, visitors from around the world come to see the walls, and many leave wondering how such a feat was possible. The priests may have watched the sun's journey across the sky, linking their rituals to the changing seasons. Nearby lies the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, a carved rock that some believe was used as an astronomical tool to track celestial events. To the Incas, the heavens were alive with meaning, and Machu Picchu was a place where earth and sky touched. Life in the citadel must have been both challenging and extraordinary. The people who lived and worked there would have awakened each morning to views that stretched far beyond the valleys, where condors soared on the winds and the peaks glowed with the first light of dawn. They farmed on the terraces, growing maize, potatoes and other crops, adapting cleverly to the high-altitude environment. Llamas and alpacas grazed nearby, providing wool, meat and companionship. Priests carried out ceremonies, nobles held gatherings, and workers maintained the site. Each person had a role, and together they sustained a city in the clouds. For centuries after the fall of the Inca Empire, Machu Picchu lay hidden from the wider world, swallowed by vegetation, its stones wrapped in moss and vines. The Spanish conquerors, who destroyed so many other Inca sites, never found it. This secrecy helped preserve it, allowing the citadel to remain largely intact until it was revealed again in the early 20th century. When the American explorer Hiram Bingham came upon the site in the year 1911, guided by local farmers, the world's attention turned to this wonder of stone and sky. His discovery brought Machu Picchu into history books and travel journals, sparking debates, studies, and endless fascination. Since then, Machu Picchu has become a symbol not only of Inca ingenuity, but of the resilience of human creativity itself. It is a place where people marvel at what can be accomplished without modern machines, reminding us that knowledge, determination, and connection to the land can achieve feats that seem impossible. Tourists from across the globe make the journey to climb the winding trails or ride the train that snakes through the valleys, eager to step into the misty realm of the Incas. Many arrive breathless not only from the altitude but from awe, overwhelmed by the beauty and mystery that radiates from every stone. But to see Machu Picchu only as a relic of the past is to miss part of its essence. For the descendants of the Incas, the Quechua people, it is still a living place, woven into their heritage and identity. The mountains around it are sacred, the rivers carry stories, and the stones are not dead matter but hold a spirit that connects the present to the ancestors. Ceremonies are still held, songs still sung, and traditions still carried on, reminding visitors that this citadel is not just a ruin, but a thread in the great fabric of life in the Andes. As one wanders through the stone pathways, the mind often drifts to the question of how many hands laboured to raise such walls, how many voices once echoed off these stones, how many fires burned in the cold nights. The silence of the ruins invites imagination, and every traveller finds their own story within the mist. Some see it as a place of peace, others as a reminder of a lost grandeur, and still others as a symbol of mystery that will never be fully solved. The majesty of Machu Picchu lies not only in its stones but in its setting. The mountain ridge on which it stands is embraced by peaks with names full of spirit, such as Huayna Picchu, the young peak that rises like a guardian above the citadel. To climb it is to see the citadel from above, small against the vast sweep of valleys and rivers, a speck of human achievement in the immensity of nature. The Urubamba River winds far below, a silver ribbon cutting through the green, its roar reaching faintly to the heights. The clouds drift and swirl, opening sudden windows to reveal the sun, then closing again to wrap everything in a dreamlike haze. The engineering of the site extends far beyond its visible walls. Beneath the surface lies a hidden foundation of stone and gravel, carefully arranged to drain water and prevent collapse. Channels guide rainwater through the terraces and out of the city, protecting it from the torrential downpours that sweep the mountains. These unseen works are part of the genius of Machu Picchu, proof that the builders did not merely place stones but created a living system in harmony with the land. Earthquakes, rains, winds, and centuries of silence have not erased this achievement. Instead, the citadel endures, teaching those who walk its paths about balance, patience, and vision. To touch its stones is to feel the pulse of history, to sense the strength of a people who lived close to the earth yet reached for the skies. Every wall, every terrace, every carved stone whispers of a time when the Incas stood as masters of their world, shaping the mountains themselves into a place of wonder. The story of Machu Picchu is not only the story of architecture and engineering, but of spirit and resilience. It stands high in the Andes, a citadel born from stone, mountain and sky, waiting endlessly for those who seek to understand, to dream and to marvel. Teotihuacan, in the heart of Mexico, is one of the most mysterious places ever built by human hands. A city of pyramids and temples that seems to have been planned with a precision that rivals even the most advanced civilizations in history. This vast and ancient city lies about 30 miles northeast of what is today Mexico City, and though it has been studied for more than 100 years, its origins and the identity of its builders are still wrapped in mystery. What stands there today are immense pyramids, broad avenues and countless ruins of smaller temples, palaces and homes, all constructed with such order that one might think they were guided by a plan far greater than ordinary settlement building. The pyramids themselves are aligned with the stars, the sun and the surrounding mountains, showing that whoever built them had knowledge of astronomy and geometry that is astonishing for a people whose name and language are unknown to us. The largest and most famous pyramid is called the Pyramid of the Sun. It rises more than 200 feet into the sky, making it one of the tallest structures in the ancient world, comparable in scale to some of the smaller pyramids in Egypt. To build it, millions of tons of stone and earth had to be quarried, carried and stacked, all without the use of wheels, iron tools or beasts of burden like horses or oxen. The Pyramid of the Sun dominates the city's central avenue, known as the Avenue of the Dead, a massive road stretching for more than a mile. At the opposite end of this avenue is another huge structure, the Pyramid of the Moon, slightly smaller than the Pyramid of the Sun but equally impressive, its steps leading upward toward the sky, and its design echoing the shape of the nearby mountain, Cerro Gordo, as if the builders intended it to mirror nature itself. Between these two massive pyramids and lining the Great Avenue are hundreds of platforms, temples and structures, each carefully aligned, as if every stone had to be placed in accordance with some larger cosmic design. The entire city spreads across more than 8 square miles, making it one of the largest cities in the ancient world. At its height, more than 100,000 people may have lived there, and some scholars even suggest it was closer to 200,000, which would have made it one of the most populated cities on Earth during its peak around the first half of the first millennium. Yet we do not know what the inhabitants called themselves. The name Teotihuacan comes from the later Aztecs, who discovered the ruins centuries after the city had already fallen into silence. To them, it was the place where gods were born, a sacred site of cosmic energy and divine creation. The Aztecs were so awed by the immense pyramids and the careful alignments of the city that they believed it was where the gods gathered to create the sun and the moon. The builders themselves, however, remain nameless, their voices lost to time, leaving behind only stone, plaster, murals, and fragments of pottery that hint at a civilization both powerful and mysterious. Walking through Teotihuacan today, one cannot help but be struck by the scale of the architecture. The Avenue of the Dead is so broad and long that from one end the other seems to vanish into the horizon. The stairways of the pyramids rise steeply, requiring effort and determination to climb, as if reminding pilgrims or priests that reaching the heights was not meant to be easy. The Pyramid of the Sun, when climbed, offers a sweeping view of the entire city and the surrounding valley, making it clear that this was no ordinary settlement. It was built to impress, to overwhelm, and perhaps to connect heaven and earth. From its summit, the alignment with the cardinal directions and the movements of the sun become apparent. During certain times of the year, especially the solstices and equinoxes, the sun sets and rises in direct relation to the pyramids and mountains around them, suggesting that the city was built as a giant calendar, a sacred map of the cosmos laid out on the land. The Pyramid of the Moon, though smaller, is equally fascinating. Its base sits at the northern end of the avenue, and its terraces frame the distant mountains in a way that suggests intentional design. Archaeologists have found burial chambers beneath the Pyramid of the Moon containing human sacrifices, animal remains, and offerings of precious objects such as obsidian blades, jade ornaments, and seashells brought from faraway oceans. These discoveries suggest that the pyramid was not just a monument, but also a temple of ritual, where ceremonies involving blood and offerings to the gods were carried out. Such rituals were likely meant to ensure the balance of the cosmos, fertility of the land, and the continued cycle of the sun and moon. Between the two Great Pyramids lies another impressive structure, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, also called the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. This temple is decorated with elaborate stone carvings of feathered serpents and other deities, some with goggle-like eyes and fanged mouths, symbols that scholars interpret as representing rain gods or war gods. Beneath this temple, archaeologists have found mass graves containing hundreds of sacrificed individuals, most of them young men, possibly warriors or captives, their hands bound and their bodies arranged as offerings. Such discoveries paint a picture of a society where religion, power and sacrifice were closely tied, where the life of the city depended on rituals meant to nourish the gods. The city itself was not only ceremonial but also residential and commercial. Excavations have revealed vast apartment compounds, some with colourful murals showing scenes of gods, rituals, animals, and even abstract designs. These murals, painted in bright red, blue, green and yellow, are among the finest examples of pre-Columbian art in the Americas. They reveal a culture rich in symbolism, where every image carried meaning. Some murals show priests or rulers wearing elaborate headdresses, others depict mythical creatures or sacred plants. In some compounds, archaeologists have found evidence of specialized workshops where artisans worked obsidian into sharp blades and arrowheads, or crafted pottery and jewelry. Teotihuacan was clearly a hub of trade and production, drawing people and goods from across Mesoamerica. Obsidian, the volcanic glass found in the region, was highly prized for its sharpness and was traded widely, giving the city wealth and influence. The city was also carefully planned. Its streets run in straight lines, laid out in a grid pattern, something unusual for ancient cities. The entire city seems to have been aligned 20 degrees east of true north, a curious orientation that some scholars link to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster, or the rising of certain celestial bodies. This alignment shows again that the builders were not just thinking about earthly needs, but also about the heavens, trying to make their city a reflection of the cosmos. This level of urban planning, with wide streets, organised housing blocks, drainage systems and monumental structures, speaks of a highly organised society with strong leadership, though whether it was ruled by kings, priests or councils is still debated. Unlike other ancient civilizations, Teotihuacan has not yielded statues or carvings of obvious rulers. There are no giant images of kings like in Egypt, or inscriptions boasting of victories like in Mesopotamia. This absence makes the city even more mysterious, as if its leaders deliberately chose anonymity, or as if their names were erased by later events. At its peak, Teotihuacan's influence stretched far beyond the valley in which it stood. Archaeological evidence shows that goods from Teotihuacan reached as far as the Mayan cities in the south and into distant lands to the north. In some Maya cities, murals even depict Teotihuacan warriors, suggesting that the city's power was not just economic but also military. Some scholars believe Teotihuacan may have been an empire, exerting control over vast areas of Mesoamerica, while others argue it was more of a cultural and religious centre, a place where many peoples gathered for trade, worship and ceremony. Whatever the truth, its reach was undeniable, and its prestige lasted long after the city itself began to decline. What makes Teotihuacan so fascinating is that its rise and fall remain largely unexplained. The city was founded around 2,000 years ago, and within a few centuries it had grown into the largest city of the Americas. Its monuments were completed with astonishing speed, showing an enormous effort of labour and resources. Then, around the 6th century, the city began to decline. Evidence suggests that many of its temples were deliberately burned, its murals destroyed, and its power diminished. By the time the Aztecs came upon it many centuries later, the city was already long abandoned, its stone structures standing silent and empty. Why this happened remains a subject of debate. Some point to droughts or climate change, others to internal rebellion, or perhaps invasion from outside groups. Still others suggest that the very scale of the city may have strained its resources, leading to collapse. The mystery is heightened by the fact that the builders left no written records. Unlike the Maya, who who inscribed their history on stelae and codices, Teotihuacan has no known system of writing that survives. What we know of the city comes only from its ruins, its art, and its influence on other cultures. This silence makes every discovery at the site feel significant, as if each excavation might hold the key to the puzzle. In recent years, archaeologists have used modern technology to peer beneath the pyramids. Beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, tunnels were discovered, filled with offerings of jade, shells, and even pools of liquid mercury, perhaps meant to symbolize rivers of the underworld. These tunnels suggest that the builders had complex beliefs about life, death, and the cosmos, and that their rituals extended far beneath the earth as well as into the sky above. The atmosphere of Teotihuacan today is both eerie and awe-inspiring. Tourists climb its pyramids, walk its broad avenues, and imagine what it must have been like when the city was alive with tens of thousands of people. The sound of drums and flutes filling the air, priests chanting, fires burning on altars, and processions moving through the streets. The sense of grandeur is still there, even in silence. The stones seem to hold memory, and the alignments with the sun and stars remind visitors that this was not just a city of stone, but a city built to connect humanity with the universe. Legends add to the mystery. The Aztecs, when they found the abandoned city, were so impressed by its scale that they wove it into their mythology. They said it was here that the gods gathered to decide who would sacrifice themselves to create the new sun. According to their myth, two gods leapt into a great fire, and from their sacrifice the sun and the moon were born. This myth was likely inspired by the massive pyramids, which to the Aztecs seemed like places where divine events must have occurred. They gave the pyramids the names we use today, connecting them with celestial bodies and seeing them as gateways between worlds. Every corner of Teotihuacan holds secrets. Excavations have uncovered figurines, pottery, jewellery, tools, and murals, each piece offering a glimpse of daily life, yet also raising new questions. Who exactly lived in the apartments? Were they organised by families, clans, or social classes? Who commanded the construction of the pyramids, and how did they mobilise the labour needed for such immense projects? Was the city ruled by kings, councils, or priests? And why did the builders choose this valley, with its mountains and rivers, as the place to lay out their cosmic city? Each answer remains uncertain, and scholars continue to debate, adding to the aura of mystery. Even the stones themselves tell stories. The city's builders used volcanic rock, adobe, and lime plaster, materials that required immense effort to shape and transport. The surfaces of the pyramids were once painted in bright colours, red and white being the most common, meaning that what we see today in bare stone was once a dazzling city of colour, gleaming in the sun. Imagine the Pyramid of the Sun painted bright red, glowing against the blue sky, or the Temple of the Feathered Serpent decorated in vivid hues, with carved serpents leaping out in brilliant detail. The murals inside the residential compounds also would have added to this colourful environment, making the city a place of both grandeur and art. Teotihuacan remains a wonder not only because of its size, but because of its silence. It challenges us with unanswered questions, making us imagine the lives, hopes, fears, and beliefs of the people who built it. It shows us that human beings, long before modern technology, were capable of incredible achievements in architecture, planning, and astronomy. It leaves us wondering about what knowledge was held by this unknown civilization, how they saw the universe, and why they built a city that would stand the test of time long after their voices had faded away. The Kailasa Temple at Ellora in India is one of the most astonishing wonders ever made by human hands. When people look at it for the first time, many do not believe what they are seeing. The entire temple, with all its towers, pillars, halls, stairways, shrines, and decorations, was not built by stacking stones one on top of another like most other temples of the world. Instead, it was carved out of a single giant rock. It is as if a mountain was carefully chiselled, hollowed, and sculpted until it became a temple. The very idea of carving downwards, removing stone after stone until a whole structure appeared, is something that seems to defy reason. To create this, more than 200,000 tons of solid rock had to be removed by hand. Imagine the number of blows of chisels and hammers that would be needed to cut away so much stone. Imagine the time it would take, the strength, the planning, and the skill. The Kailasa temple is not just a building. It is like a frozen miracle of stone that has kept its mystery for centuries. The site of Ellora is located in the western part of India, in the state of Maharashtra. The entire region is dotted with caves and rock-cut monuments, and Ellora itself has more than 100 caves. Out of these, about 30 are famous for their remarkable carvings, and among them, the grandest of all is the Kailasa temple. Unlike the others, it is not just a cave with walls and sculptures, but a freestanding temple cut into the heart of a cliff. One has to imagine the builders standing before a solid hill of rock and deciding that inside this very hill they would reveal a temple. They did not bring stones from other places. They did not build from the ground up. They started from the top and carved downwards, releasing the hidden temple from the rock as though it had always been sleeping there, waiting to be discovered. When we speak of 200,000 tons of rock being removed, it is hard to truly grasp how massive that is. If one tries to imagine it in modern terms, that is like taking away the weight of more than 30,000 large elephants. And yet, all of this was done in a time when no machines existed, no electric tools, no drills powered by engines, no cranes to lift heavy stones. The workers would have used only simple chisels, hammers, picks, and their own strength. They had to plan every single step because one wrong strike in the wrong place could ruin the entire structure. Unlike buildings that can be corrected by adding more material, here the builders could only remove stone, never add it back. So their work had to be perfect in vision and execution. The temple itself is dedicated to Lord Shiva, one of the main gods of the Hindu tradition. The name Kailasa comes from Mount Kailash, a sacred mountain in the Himalayas believed to be the abode of Shiva. In creating this temple, the builders wanted to represent that holy mountain on earth, a dwelling place for the divine carved into stone. The temple stands as a symbol of devotion, strength, and spiritual imagination, because to create something of such scale, the builders must have believed they were doing work not just for themselves but for their god. Walking into the Kailasa temple is like stepping into another world. From a distance, one sees a towering structure rising from the rock, with pillars, halls, and shrines surrounding it. As one gets closer, the sheer detail becomes more striking. The walls are covered with sculptures of gods, goddesses, animals, and mythological scenes. Elephants appear carved at the base, looking as though they are carrying the weight of the temple on their backs. Stories from ancient epics such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata unfold in panels across the walls. Figures of dancing goddesses, warriors in battle, sages in meditation, and divine beings all come alive in stone. The precision is so fine that even the folds of garments and the expressions on faces can be seen, carved with patience and love centuries ago. Inside the temple, there are multiple levels, balconies, and passageways, all cut from the same rock. Light filters in through openings, casting shadows that give the carvings a mystical quality. The central shrine, where the lingam of Lord Shiva is placed, feels as though it is the beating heart of the temple. Around it are halls where devotees could gather, and pathways for rituals and processions. Every part of the temple was thought out in detail, and yet it was not drawn on paper or planned with modern instruments. The entire plan was likely held in the minds of master architects and passed on to the workers through word and demonstration. What makes the Kailasa temple even more fascinating is the question of time. Scholars believe it was built in the 8th century under the rule of the Rashtrakuta king Krishna I. But when one thinks about the sheer effort needed to remove so much stone, it seems almost impossible to believe that it could have been completed in just a few decades. Some legends say it was finished in only 18 years, which seems beyond imagination. Even if thousands of workers laboured day and night, the idea of creating something so grand so quickly feels like a mystery. Modern engineers still wonder how such a feat could have been achieved with the tools available at that time. There are also myths surrounding its creation. One story says that a queen prayed to Lord Shiva and promised to build a temple if her husband, the king, recovered from an illness. She asked that the temple be finished quickly, and the architect promised to carve it in such a way that the top would be visible in just a few days. To fulfill this, he began carving from the top down, and within days the peak of the temple was visible. Though the rest took many years, the story remained as a tale of devotion and divine help. Whether true or not, the myth reflects how people saw the temple as something beyond ordinary human effort. Even today, when one stands inside the courtyard of Kailasa, It is difficult to believe that everything was once part of a single mountain. The surrounding walls are so high that it feels like being inside a fortress, yet every surface is decorated with images that seem to move in stone. The silence of the temple, broken only by the sounds of birds or footsteps, creates an atmosphere that feels timeless. It is not just a monument of the past, it still breathes with the energy of those who created it and those who continue to worship there. The artistry of the Kailasa temple also shows how advanced the people of that time were in understanding rock, space and design. They knew how to measure proportions so that the temple would look balanced from every angle. They created stairways, drainage systems and open spaces that made it not only beautiful but also practical. The precision of the carvings suggests that the sculptors were masters of their craft, perhaps passing down skills from generation to generation. To carve such delicate figures into hard basalt rock required patience, discipline, and vision. One of the most remarkable features is how the temple appears to be a freestanding structure, even though it is not. It looks as if it was built by placing blocks of stone one by one, but in truth, it is still part of the original mountain. The builders simply removed everything around it, leaving the temple to stand free. This makes it different from most other rock-cut monuments in the world, which are usually caves with carvings inside. The Kailasa temple is both a cave and a building, a mixture of excavation and architecture. Travelers, historians and explorers who have visited the temple over centuries have all been struck with awe. Many have compared it to wonders of the world such as the pyramids of Egypt or the great cathedrals of Europe. But what makes Kailasa unique is the method of its creation. The pyramids were built by placing blocks. The cathedrals were raised stone by stone. But Kailasa was released from within a rock, as if the builders believed that the temple was already there, waiting to be uncovered. This idea makes the monument feel like a revelation rather than a construction. The temple has also survived for more than 1,000 years despite natural wear, rains, and even invasions. It has been said that armies tried to damage it, but the hardness of the rock and the sheer scale of the structure protected it. Even when some carvings were broken, the temple as a whole remained unshaken. This durability is another reason why the Kailasa temple stands as a lasting wonder. When one thinks of the workers who carved it, questions arise. How many people worked there? How were they organized? How did they manage to carry away the enormous amounts of rock that were removed? Did they use animals or carts? Did they dump the rock nearby or transport it far away? These practical mysteries add another layer to the fascination. The answers are not fully known, and perhaps that is why the temple still inspires so much curiosity. It is also important to imagine the spiritual atmosphere of the time when it was created. For the people working on it, this was not just labour, it was an offering. Every strike of the hammer and chisel was a prayer. Every carved figure was a way of bringing the divine into stone. The temple was meant to be not only a place of worship, but also a cosmic symbol, a reflection of Mount Kailash and the heavens above. In this way, the monument becomes more than a structure. It becomes a connection between human beings and the divine, between earth and sky, between rock and spirit. The Kailasa temple at Ellora is therefore not just about size, weight, or engineering. It is about imagination and devotion that could see a mountain not as a block of stone, but as a living temple waiting to be revealed. It is about human beings pushing their limits to create something that would outlast them, something that would speak of their faith and skill for centuries to come. Even today, when people visit and stand in its shadow, they feel the same sense of wonder that those first visitors must have felt so many centuries ago. Pumapunku in Bolivia is one of those places in the world where history feels like a mystery carved in stone. When people visit it for the first time, they often feel as if they have stepped into the ruins of some ancient science fiction story. Lying high in the Andes Mountains near the more famous site of Tiwanaku, Pumapunku has long been a source of wonder because of the massive stone blocks scattered across the plateau. These stones are not only huge, some weighing many tons, but also shaped with a level of accuracy and detail that seems almost impossible for a civilization that lived thousands of years ago without machines or advanced tools as we know them today. Many of the blocks look as if they were cut by modern machines, even though they were built in a time far before electricity, engines, or steel cutters existed. This fact alone has puzzled archaeologists, engineers, and countless visitors for centuries. The name Pumapunku means the door of the puma in the local Aymara language, which already gives it a sense of grandeur and mystery. Standing there among the ruins, it feels less like a door and more like a shattered monument from a forgotten civilization. Legends passed down by the local people say that the stones were not put in place by human hands alone. Some stories tell of gods or supernatural beings who helped shape and move them. Others believe that this place was a kind of gateway, not just a doorway to a temple, but a doorway between worlds, connecting the earthly realm with the heavens. What makes Pumapunku so fascinating is not only the size of the blocks, but the way they were cut. Many of the stones have perfectly straight lines, right angles, and complex geometric shapes. Some have deep grooves, drilled holes, and interlocking patterns that seem like they were designed with modern engineering in mind. To stand in front of one of the famous H-shaped blocks is to see something that could easily fit into a modern architectural project. These stones are so precise that even a razor blade or sheet of paper can hardly fit between the joins where two blocks meet. This has caused endless debates. How could people thousands of years ago, with no iron tools, no steel chisels, and no machines, achieve such a level of accuracy? The blocks themselves are not small. Some weigh 10 tons, others 30 tons, and there are pieces that weigh well over 100 tons. Moving even one of them would be a challenge today, requiring cranes, trucks, and careful planning. Yet the ancient builders of Pumapunku somehow not only transported them, but also cut them with precision and set them into complex patterns. The quarry where the stones were brought from is several miles away, meaning that they had to be hauled across difficult terrain without wheels, without modern roads, and without the use of draft animals like horses or oxen, which were unknown in the region before the arrival of Europeans. The very idea of moving these stones is a puzzle. Did they roll them on logs? Did they drag them with ropes? Or did they have some technique we no longer understand? The most striking blocks are made of andesite and red sandstone, both of which are incredibly hard materials. Andesite is a volcanic rock, and anyone who has tried to carve or cut it knows it is much tougher than limestone or sandstone. Even with modern diamond-tipped tools, cutting and shaping andesite requires effort and precision. Yet the builders of Pumapunku shaped it as if it were clay, leaving behind sharp edges, smooth surfaces, and perfectly drilled holes. Engineers who have studied the site sometimes admit that the craftsmanship looks as though it were done with tools similar to saws, drills, or lathes. But if such tools existed at the time, they have long since vanished, leaving only the stones behind as silent witnesses. Because of this, Pumapunku has become one of the most popular examples used by people who believe in lost civilizations or even ancient contact with advanced beings. Some claim that an advanced culture, now forgotten, had techniques far beyond what we imagine. Others say it may have been built with the help of visitors from beyond Earth, pointing to the machine-like cuts as evidence. Whether or not one believes these ideas, standing before the stones does raise a deep sense of mystery. It is as if the stones are speaking, but in a language we have not yet learned to understand. This site is believed to be over 1,500 years old, linked to the Tiwanaku civilization, which flourished in the region long before the Inca Empire. Tiwanaku was a powerful culture, with a great understanding of agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. Their capital city near Lake Titicaca was filled with temples, pyramids, and ceremonial plazas. Pumapunku may have been one of their most sacred places, possibly a part of a grand temple complex used for rituals and gatherings. Archaeologists think it was a religious site, perhaps symbolizing creation or the cosmic order, but the exact purpose has been lost in time. If one looks closely at the stones, the detail is astonishing. There are patterns that look almost like puzzle pieces, where one stone locks into another with grooves and ridges. These interlocking designs would have made the structures extremely stable, resistant to earthquakes, which are common in the region. This suggests that the builders were not only artists but also brilliant engineers. Even though much of the site lies in ruins today, with stones scattered as if a great force tore them apart, one can still imagine how impressive it must have looked when it was intact. A vast courtyard with walls made of massive fitted stones, gateways carved with geometric precision, and platforms that seem to rise naturally out of the earth. Some stones also bear U-shaped cuts and drill holes that look like they were made for metal clamps. This technique has been found in other ancient sites, like Egypt and Peru, where molten metal was poured into these slots to bind stones together. If this was the case at Pumapunku, it would show a surprising knowledge of metallurgy for the time. Yet another puzzle lies in the uniformity of the cuts. Many stones look as if they were mass-produced, like blocks cast from a mould. Rows of H-shaped blocks line the site, each nearly identical in shape and dimension. How did ancient builders achieve such uniformity without standard tools or measurement systems like we have today? There is also the question of what happened to Pumapunku. Today it lies in ruins, with stones scattered and toppled. Some researchers believe a great earthquake or natural disaster may have torn the structures apart. Others suggest that invaders destroyed it, or that time and weather simply wore it down. Whatever the cause, what remains is still awe-inspiring. The shattered stones lying across the plateau give the place a haunting beauty, as if the remnants of some lost age have been frozen in time. Local traditions add even more layers of mystery. According to some Aymara myths, Pumapunku was the place where the gods created the first humans. It was considered sacred ground, a birthplace of humanity itself. Legends say that the stones were moved into place by giant beings, or floated into position by the sound of sacred music. Whether these are symbolic stories or memories of forgotten techniques, they give a sense of how important Pumapunku was to the people who lived there. It was not just stonework, it was a centre of myth, belief, and wonder. In modern times, Pumapunku continues to attract explorers, archaeologists, engineers, and travellers from around the world. Some come looking for evidence of lost civilizations, others to marvel at human ingenuity, and still others to connect with the spiritual energy that many say can be felt in the stones. Whatever one's reason for visiting, the impression it leaves is unforgettable. The sight of those massive blocks lying under the wide Andean sky makes people feel both small and connected to something timeless. Even today, scholars continue to study the site. Laser scans, 3D models, and detailed measurements have been made to better understand how the stones were cut and fitted. Some discoveries suggest that the builders had advanced knowledge of geometry and symmetry, which they applied in ways that went beyond simple stone carving. Though science has made progress in understanding some techniques, there remain questions that still have no clear answers. How were the hardest stones shaped so precisely? How were the largest blocks transported without wheels or beasts of burden? How was such uniformity achieved? These are mysteries that continue to fuel debate and imagination. It is also worth remembering that Pumapunku was part of a larger cultural landscape. Near it lies Tiwanaku, with its famous Gateway of the Sun and large stepped pyramid called Akapana. Together, these sites form one of the most important archaeological zones in South America, a place that shows the brilliance of the Tiwanaku civilization. Pumapunku may have been their masterpiece, a monument that combined art, science, and spirituality in ways that still astonish us today. When you walk among the ruins, you can almost picture the ceremonies that may have taken place there. Priests in colourful garments standing on the platforms, offering prayers to the sun and the sky. Crowds of people gathering in the plaza, surrounded by towering walls of stone. The air filled with music, chants, and the sound of drums. Fires burning in sacred bowls as the stars above mirrored the design of the temples below. It is easy to imagine Pumapunku not just as a construction site, but as a living place, filled with energy and meaning. Over the centuries, the site has weathered storms, earthquakes, and the passage of time. Spanish chroniclers who visited the area after the conquest of the Inca described it with awe, saying that even in its ruined state, it was greater than anything they had seen in Europe. For them too, the precision of the stone seemed impossible without machines. They wondered if it had been built by giants or by beings with powers beyond ordinary humans. The more one studies Pumapunku, the more questions arise. Was it really just the work of the Tiwanaku people, or is there more to the story? Did they inherit the site from an even older culture whose knowledge has been lost? Could it be that humanity once had techniques that we can hardly imagine today, techniques that vanished with time? Or is it possible that Pumapunku is evidence of something even stranger? Nan Madol in Micronesia is one of those places that seems to step out of the line between history and legend. It is often described as a city built on the sea, a place where giant stone blocks rest upon coral reefs, rising out of the water like a dream of a city that should not even exist. People who see it for the first time often compare it to a stone version of Venice, because just like Venice, It is a city of waterways, canals, and small artificial islands connected together. But unlike Venice, which was built with bricks and wooden piles, Nan Madol was built from enormous black basalt stones that were arranged and stacked like logs. The very sight of it leaves people with questions. How could people, living so long ago without modern machines, manage to transport and lift such heavy stones and create such a city right on the water? This city is found in the Pacific Ocean, on the island of Pohnpei, which belongs to the Federated States of Micronesia. Long before Europeans ever arrived there, the local people had already been telling stories about the city. They said it was not simply a place for people to live, but also a sacred site, a political centre, and a spiritual home for their rulers. The very name Nan Madol means spaces between, a fitting name because the city is made up of nearly 100 small artificial islets, separated by narrow canals of water. From above, the city looks like a grid of dark stone, with straight lines and sharp angles surrounded by blue-green water. What makes Nan Madol even more mysterious is how it was built. The builders used basalt, a type of volcanic rock that can be very heavy. Some of the stones used in the walls weigh several tons. These stones were shaped into long prismatic columns, looking almost like logs of stone. The people placed them side by side, stacking them in layers like you would stack giant pieces of timber, creating walls that are still standing after hundreds of years. The largest walls in Nan Madol rise to nearly 30 feet in height and are several feet thick. These are not just piles of stone, but carefully arranged structures that form temples, tombs, houses, and courtyards. To imagine the size of the city, one has to understand that it covers an area of nearly 200 acres. That is an enormous undertaking for any civilization, but especially for one that had no iron tools, no pulleys, no cranes, and no wheels. The site includes canals that function like streets, so people would move around in canoes, going from one islet to another. Some islets were built as living quarters for priests and nobles, while others were used for ceremonies, burials, and storage. The largest and most impressive of these islets is called Nandawas, a royal enclosure built with walls so massive and high that they resemble a fortress. Inside Nandawas were sacred burial sites where the rulers of Pohnpei were laid to rest. Local legends tell stories about the origins of Nan Madol. According to tradition, the city was built by two brothers who came from afar, often said to be from the mythical land of Kanamwaiso. These brothers, Olisipa and Olosopa, were said to be sorcerers or priests who used magic to move the massive stones into place. Some versions of the story say they commanded flying dragons or spirits to lift the stones and carry them across the sea. Whether one believes in the magic or not, the legend shows just how astonishing the construction must have seemed to the people themselves. To them, it was so impossible by normal means that only supernatural powers could explain it. When archaeologists began studying Nan Madol, they too were baffled. There were no clear quarries nearby that could have produced the exact type of basalt found at the site. The stones appear to have been transported from several miles away, possibly from volcanic outcrops on the opposite side of the island, moving them across the rough terrain of Pohnpei and then across the water to the coral reef platform where the city was built would have required an enormous amount of manpower and ingenuity. Even if we assume they used wooden rollers, levers and rafts, the coordination and effort needed would have been staggering. Another strange thing about Nan Madol is its location. It was built right on top of a reef, not on solid ground. To create the islets, the builders had to lay down layers of stone and coral fill, making artificial platforms strong enough to hold the heavy basalt walls. This would have been an extremely labour-intensive process. It also shows that the city was meant to be different from any other settlement. It was not simply a town for living, it was a sacred and ceremonial city, deliberately separated from the rest of the island. The rulers of Pohnpei used Nan Madol as their capital, a place where they could control both the spiritual and political life of their people. By living apart from the common villagers, surrounded by water and protected by high walls, they reinforced their authority and mystery. The construction of Nan Madol began many centuries ago. Archaeological evidence suggests that people first started building there around the 1st or 2nd century, but the city reached its height much later, around the 12th century. For several hundred years it remained the seat of the Sodler dynasty, a line of rulers who are remembered both with respect and fear. The Sodler were said to be absolute rulers who demanded tribute and obedience from all the people of Pohnpei. They lived in Nan Madol, surrounded by priests and nobles, while the common people lived outside and were required to provide food and labour for the city. Life in Nan Madol must have been unlike anywhere else in the Pacific at the time. Imagine a city of stone rising from the sea, where rulers and priests carried out rituals, where sacred fires burned in temple courtyards, and where chants and ceremonies echoed across the water. Canoes glided silently through the canals, carrying offerings, priests and nobles dressed in fine mats and ornaments. At night, the dark basalt walls would have loomed above the water, lit by torches, giving the city a mysterious and almost haunting atmosphere. But Nan Madol was not only a place of grandeur, it was also a place of control. The rulers used it to keep their nobles close so they could not rebel. By forcing the high-ranking families to live in the city, the rulers weakened their independence. However, this also created problems. The site had no natural source of fresh water or food. Everything had to be brought in from outside, carried by canoe from the main island. This dependence on outside supplies made the city vulnerable, and it also placed a heavy burden on the people who had to provide constant tribute. Eventually, the Sodelur dynasty fell. By the 16th century, local traditions say, a warrior from Kosrae named Isokalikel led a rebellion against the Sodelur rulers. He and his followers invaded Pohnpei and defeated the dynasty, ending their reign. Nan Madol was abandoned not long after, left to crumble slowly under the forces of time, weather, and the encroaching sea. Today the ruins still stand, covered with moss and plants, the canals filled with seawater, and the massive basalt walls silent witnesses to a vanished world. When Europeans first arrived in the region, they too were astonished by the ruins. In the 19th century, explorers compared Nan Madol to ancient cities in Asia, or even to the ruins of Atlantis, the legendary lost city described by Plato. To this day, some people still call it the Venice of the Pacific, or the Atlantis of Micronesia. The combination of mystery, engineering marvel, and the beauty of its setting makes Nan Madol one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in the world. The mystery of how exactly the stones were moved and placed has led to many theories. Some suggest that the builders may have floated the basalt logs on rafts, although the weight of some stones seems far too great for this method. Others propose that they may have used ramps, levers, and large groups of workers to haul the stones into place. There are even fringe theories that suggest ancient people had advanced knowledge now lost to us, or that they were helped by outsiders from distant lands. The truth is still debated, but whatever the exact method, the skill and determination of the builders cannot be denied. Nan Madol also holds great cultural importance. For the people of Pohnpei, it is not just an ancient ruin, but a sacred place filled with history, memory, and spiritual power. The old legends of the brothers who built the city with magic still live on, and local traditions warn that disturbing the site can bring misfortune. Some elders say that anyone who takes stones from Nan Madol or shows disrespect will be punished by the spirits that still guard the city. Walking through Nan Madol today, one can still feel that aura of mystery. The canals are quiet, filled with clear seawater that reflects the sky. The walls of black basalt rise suddenly from the water, sharp and imposing. Moss and vines creep along the stones, softening their edges but not hiding their strength. Birds fly overhead, and the sound of waves crashing on the reef echoes in the distance. It is easy to imagine the city as it once was, alive with the voices of priests, the songs of ceremonies, and the movement of canoes between the islets. What is especially striking is how the city seems both human and otherworldly. It is clearly a product of human effort, but its sheer size and its strange beauty give it a quality that feels beyond ordinary human ability. Perhaps that is why the legends insist it was built with the help of magic. When people look at a place that seems impossible, they naturally imagine forces greater than themselves at work. Nan Madol is one of those places. Some researchers believe that Nan Madol may have been more than just a political and ceremonial centre. It could have been an astronomical site, aligned with the movements of the sun, moon and stars. Others think it may have served as a kind of model city, a physical representation of a spiritual world. The truth may never be known, but this uncertainty only adds to the fascination. Over the years, Nan Madol has captured the imagination of writers, travellers, and explorers. It has been compared to the pyramids of Egypt, to Stonehenge in England, and to Machu Picchu in Peru. Like those sites, it represents a moment in human history when people achieved something extraordinary without the technology we now consider necessary. It is a reminder that ancient civilizations were capable of incredible feats of engineering and organization. Today, efforts are being made to preserve Nan Madol because the ruins are threatened by the forces of nature. Rising sea levels, erosion, and plant growth all threaten to damage the site. Archaeologists and conservationists are working with the local community to protect it, because it is not only a treasure of Micronesia, but also of the entire world. In fact, UNESCO declared Nan Madol a World Heritage Site in the year 2016, recognizing its universal value and the need to safeguard it for future generations. Yet even as scholars and scientists study Nan Madol, the site continues to inspire awe and wonder. Standing on its mossy stones, one cannot help but think about the people who built it. Who were they? How did they live? What drove them to create such a city on the sea, with walls of stone so heavy and vast? Their voices are silent now, but their work remains, speaking across the centuries. Nan Madol is a story in stone, a mystery carved out of basalt and coral, a place where history and legend meet. The Great Wall of China stretches like a giant stone ribbon across mountains, valleys, deserts, and plains, a wonder so vast and so old that even today it leaves people speechless. When one begins to imagine its size, its history, and the effort that went into its construction, the mind struggles to grasp the full picture. This is not a single wall in one place, but rather a network of walls, towers, fortresses and trenches that snake across the land for thousands upon thousands of miles. Built and rebuilt over centuries, it became one of the largest projects humans have ever attempted, and its sheer length and the effort to raise it over such harsh and uneven terrain still baffle historians and engineers. The wall was not built all at once, nor was it the work of a single dynasty. Instead, it grew gradually, like a living thing, as rulers in different eras added sections, repaired parts that crumbled, and expanded its reach. Some sections were made of stone, others of tamped earth, and still others of bricks, depending on what materials were available in the nearby lands. Yet, despite these differences, the wall formed a massive chain that stood as both a barrier and a symbol of power. Its presence was meant to keep enemies out, but also to show the strength and determination of those who ruled China. When historians try to measure its length, they are faced with astonishing numbers. If one adds together all the parts built across many centuries, the Great Wall is estimated to stretch for more than 13,000 miles. To put that into perspective, that is more than half the circumference of the entire planet. The scale is so enormous that the mind struggles to hold it. And this was not a wall built on flat, gentle ground. Much of it winds across jagged mountains where slopes rise steep and treacherous, or across dry deserts where the heat burns and the wind lashes with sand. Every brick and every stone had to be carried, lifted and fitted into place by human hands, often at the cost of terrible suffering. The earliest beginnings of the Great Wall reach back over 2,000 years, to a time when China was divided into many smaller states. These states often fought with one another, and each built walls to defend its lands. Later, when the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, rose to power in the 3rd century before the birth of Christ, he ordered that many of these separate walls be linked together. This was not just about defense, but also about unifying the land under his rule. The emperor wanted to make a statement that China was one, and that it would be protected from the nomadic tribes who roamed the northern steppes. The building of the wall under Qin Shi Huang was done with enormous speed and harshness. Thousands upon thousands of labourers were forced into service, including soldiers, peasants, and prisoners. Many of them worked under brutal conditions, carrying heavy loads up steep mountain paths, digging deep foundations and stacking stones under the hot sun or in freezing winds. The cost in human lives was immense. There are stories, perhaps exaggerated but still haunting, that those who died during construction were buried within the wall itself. Even if that is more legend than fact, there is no doubt that countless people perished in the effort. Over time, as dynasties rose and fell, the wall was neglected, repaired, or extended again. Some parts were left to crumble back into the earth, while others were strengthened to meet new threats. The Ming dynasty, which ruled from the 14th to the 17th centuries after the birth of Christ, undertook one of the greatest rebuilding efforts. They replaced many of the old sections with stronger stone and brick walls, added watchtowers, and built fortresses along the line. Much of what visitors see today when they walk along the wall was built by the Ming, whose rulers understood that the wall was not just about defense, but also about showing power to friend and foe alike. The wall was more than a barrier of stone. Along its length were thousands of watchtowers, beacon platforms and gates. From the towers, soldiers could scan the horizon, watching for any sign of movement. If enemies approached, smoke signals by day and fire signals by night could pass warnings from tower to tower, spreading news across vast distances at remarkable speed. The gates along the wall served as checkpoints where merchants and travellers could pass, bringing trade and cultural exchange even while armies stood guard. In this way, the wall was not only a shield but also a spine of communication and control. Walking along the wall today, one sees endless stretches that climb ridges so steep they look almost impossible to scale. Some parts rise and fall like a staircase built by giants, with steps so high and uneven that even modern visitors find them exhausting. Imagine then the effort of carrying heavy stones up these same slopes centuries ago. Yet somehow the builders achieved it. How they managed such feats without modern machinery continues to puzzle experts. They used ropes, wooden scaffolds, ramps of earth, and sheer muscle power. But even with these, the achievements remain extraordinary. In some places, the wall cuts through deserts where water is scarce, and where sandstorms could bury parts of it. In these regions, builders use local materials such as tamped earth or reeds mixed with layers of sand, creating a sturdy structure that has lasted for centuries. In mountainous areas, giant blocks of stone were carved and dragged into position. Every section of the wall reflects the environment in which it was built, and this adaptability is part of why the wall endured. The wall also shaped the lives of those who lived near it. Soldiers were stationed along its length, often living in harsh isolation, far from their families. Their duty was to guard the empire, to light the beacons at the first sign of threat, and to stand ready against invasions. Farmers too were drawn into its orbit since they provided food and supplies for the garrisons. Villages grew near certain gates, where trade could flow, and these became lively places where cultures met. For those who lived by the wall, it was not just a line of defence but a part of daily life. The Great Wall has long captured the imagination of the world. Travellers from far lands, upon hearing of its size, often could not believe the reports. When they finally saw it, they were overwhelmed by its scale. Some have even said that it can be seen from space, though that is more myth than truth, for it is narrow and often blends into the land. Yet, whether or not it is visible from the heavens, it stands as a monument that seems almost beyond human power. The sheer will and determination required to build the Great Wall remain a mystery that fascinates historians. Why would rulers demand such a massive project, knowing the immense suffering it caused? Part of the answer lies in fear. Fear of the nomadic horsemen from the north who often raided Chinese lands. The wall was a shield against these warriors, who were swift and skilled at striking across the open plains. But part of the answer lies also in pride and control. The wall was a way for emperors to show that they could command nature itself, bending mountains and rivers to their will by running a wall across them. The wall is also filled with stories and legends. Tales speak of brave soldiers who defended it to their last breath, of lovers separated by duty, of ghosts who haunt the lonely towers. One of the most famous legends tells of a woman named Mengjiangnu, whose husband was taken away to work on the wall. When he died from the hard labour, she wept so bitterly that a section of the wall collapsed. This story, whether true or not, shows how deeply the suffering tied to the wall has remained in the memory of the people. Over the centuries, the wall has stood through wars, invasions, and the passage of countless generations. Parts of it have crumbled, overtaken by weeds and weather, but other parts still stand strong, a reminder of the endurance of those who built it. Walking along its stones, one can almost feel the weight of history pressing down, the echoes of voices from long ago, the footsteps of soldiers, the cries of labourers, the shouts of commanders. The Great Wall of China is not just a piece of architecture, it is a symbol of the limits and the power of human ambition. To look at its length, snaking over ridges and vanishing into the horizon, is to be reminded of what people can achieve when driven by fear, by pride, or by vision. The fact that it was built across such rugged and unforgiving terrain makes it even more astonishing. No matter how many measurements are made or how many studies are done, the wall still holds an air of mystery. It is at once a practical defence and a dream of power carved into stone, earth and brick, stretching further than the eye can follow and carrying with it the endless stories of the past. Ollantaytambo in Peru is one of those places that fills people with wonder the moment they see it. It is not just because it is perched high in the mountains of the Andes, but because the site itself is a masterpiece of stonework, engineering, and planning that still leaves visitors and historians puzzled today. The place is filled with terraces carved into steep mountain slopes, stone walls fitted so tightly together that not even the thinnest blade can slide between them, and enormous blocks that seem to defy logic in how they were moved and placed. To stand there and look at Ollantaytambo is to witness a mixture of natural beauty and human genius, a place where mountains, rivers and stone come together in a harmony that feels timeless. The location of Ollantaytambo was not chosen by chance. It lies in the sacred valley of the Incas, a region that was considered one of the most important areas for the great Incan civilization. The valley is fertile, watered by rivers, and surrounded by mountains that reach into the sky like watchtowers. The Incas saw the land not only as a source of life, but also as a sacred place where the earth, the sky, and the spirits of their ancestors connected. Building in such a location was both a practical choice and a spiritual one, for it provided food and protection, but also carried deep meaning. The terraces built into the mountainsides were more than just farming tools, they were also works of art, a way of shaping the land while respecting it. Each terrace was carefully measured and layered, with stones forming retaining walls and soil arranged so crops could grow at different altitudes, creating a kind of stairway of greenery that climbed the slopes of the Andes. What makes Ollantaytambo stand out is the incredible precision of its stonework. The Incan builders did not use mortar to bind the stones. Instead, they carved each block so carefully that they fit together perfectly, as though the stones themselves wanted to be united. Many of these blocks are enormous, some weighing many tons, yet they sit together with such accuracy that centuries of earthquakes have not been able to pull them apart. The Andes are a region that shakes and trembles often, but Ollantaytambo still stands, almost as though the stones are alive and holding each other in an embrace too strong to be broken. One of the most remarkable areas of Ollantaytambo is the Temple of the Sun. Here, massive stone blocks are lined up with such skill that even today, people wonder how the ancient builders managed it. Some of these stones were brought from quarries several kilometers away, across rivers and up steep slopes. To imagine hauling blocks that weigh tens of tons without wheels, without modern machines, and only with human strength and clever engineering is almost beyond belief. Yet they did it, and they did it with such skill that the temple still takes one's breath away. The precision is so fine that the edges of the stones meet with sharp, clean lines, and the surfaces are smoothed to perfection. It is as if the builders understood both the strength of stone and the delicate touch needed to tame it. The terraces of Ollantaytambo are not only beautiful but also deeply practical. They turned the steep, rugged mountain slopes into farmland, creating layers where maize, potatoes and other crops could grow. The design helped to prevent erosion, kept the soil fertile, and used the natural flow of water to nourish the plants. The Incas were not just great builders, they were also great farmers, and they understood the land in ways that allowed them to thrive in places that would have seemed impossible to others. Standing among the terraces, one can almost hear the sound of farmers working, the rustling of plants in the wind, and the rhythm of a society that was both deeply spiritual and highly skilled in survival. The site also served as a fortress, a stronghold where the Incas made a stand against the Spanish conquerors in the 16th century. The steep terraces acted like defensive walls, forcing attackers to climb while exposing themselves to those defending above. At one point, the Incan forces used the clever tactic of flooding the plains below Ollantaytambo, using canals to direct water and make it difficult for the Spanish horses and soldiers to advance. For a short time, the Incas were able to hold back the invaders, showing not only bravery but also intelligence in using the land as a weapon. Though the Spanish eventually gained control, the story of Ollantaytambo as a place of resistance lives on, a reminder of the courage and ingenuity of the Incan people. Another fascinating aspect is the quarries where the stones were cut. These quarries were located on the opposite side of the valley, across the river and up steep cliffs. To imagine the process of cutting such massive blocks, lowering them, crossing the river, and then pulling them up again to the site is almost unbelievable. There are still unfinished stones along the way, as if they were abandoned suddenly, giving us a glimpse of the immense effort required. Some stones were left partially shaped, lying silent as if they were frozen in time, caught in the moment when the builders had to stop their work. These abandoned stones whisper of the challenges faced and the mysteries that remain. Ollantaytambo was not only a place of defense or farming, but also a place of life. It was a town, a community where people lived, prayed, and worked. Stone streets, canals that carried water, and houses built with the same precision as the great temples show that this was not just a ceremonial site, but a living city. The canals still carry water even today, their flow steady and clear, proof of the advanced knowledge of hydraulics that the Incas possessed. Walking through the narrow streets, one can feel the presence of the people who once called it home, their footsteps echoing faintly in the stones, their daily lives etched into the very walls that still stand. The surrounding landscape adds to the sense of wonder. Towering mountains rise on all sides, their peaks often shrouded in mist, as if the gods themselves wish to keep their secrets hidden. The river Urubamba flows through the valley, its waters swift and restless, carrying with them the lifeblood of the land. The Incas must have felt that they were living in a place where the earth and the heavens touched, where every stone and every mountain had a spirit. Ollantaytambo was not built in isolation, but as part of this larger sacred landscape, connected to other important sites like Machu Picchu and Cusco through a network of roads and trails. These connections suggest that Ollantaytambo played a central role in the life of the empire, perhaps as a royal estate, a religious centre, and a strategic fortress all at once. Visitors today often marvel at the sheer atmosphere of the place. There is something about standing among the massive stones, looking up at terraces that climb endlessly into the heights, and feeling the weight of history pressing in from every side. It is easy to imagine the rituals, the festivals, the daily lives, and the struggles that once filled the air. The past feels closer to Ollantaytambo, not as a distant memory, but as something that lingers, almost alive, carried in the stones themselves. The mysteries of Ollantaytambo continue to spark curiosity. How exactly did the builders shape and transport the stones? How did they measure with such precision without modern tools? What rituals and beliefs guided their work? These questions remain, and perhaps they always will, but in the not knowing lies part of the magic. Each visitor brings their own imagination, their own wonder, and in doing so, the site continues to live and to inspire. When the sun rises or sets over the mountains, Ollantaytambo glows with a golden light, and the stones seem to breathe with warmth. Shadows lengthen across the terraces, and the walls take on colours that shift with the sky. At night, when the stars appear, the mountains and the site below seem like a reflection of the heavens, as if the builders intended for Ollantaytambo to be a mirror of the cosmos itself. The Incas were known to align many of their structures with celestial events, and it is likely that Ollantaytambo was no different. Its stones and terraces linked not only to the earth, but also to the stars above. Ollantaytambo is more than a collection of ruins. It is a story carved into stone, a story of human vision and endurance, of a people who understood how to shape the world around them while also honouring it. The terraces, the temples, the canals, and the stones all speak together, forming a language of stone that transcends time. To walk there is to listen to that language, to feel the pulse of a civilization that was both practical and poetic, both grounded in survival and lifted by dreams of the eternal. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta is one of the most extraordinary ancient sites ever discovered, a place that takes us back 5,000 years into the distant past, when people who had no metal tools, no advanced machines, and no modern equipment somehow managed to carve deep into the limestone bedrock of the island and create a vast underground temple complex unlike anything else in the world. This hidden sanctuary lies beneath the streets of the town of Paula, and for centuries it remained completely concealed, unknown even to those living directly above it, until chance brought it back to light in the early years of the 20th century. It is not just an underground chamber, but an entire labyrinth of passages, halls, stairways, and carved spaces that show a level of architectural and artistic sophistication far ahead of its time, making it one of the great mysteries of ancient human achievement. The Hypogeum was discovered in the year 1902 when workers digging for a cistern accidentally broke through into a hollow space. What they uncovered was far from an ordinary cave. Instead, it was a place where walls had been carefully smoothed, chambers precisely shaped, and carvings decorated the stone. Archaeologists soon realised that this was no natural formation, but a man-made monument from a time long before writing, long before cities, and long before most of the world's known civilizations had even begun to take shape. From the very first moment, the Hypogeum revealed that it was something extraordinary, a monument not of stone rising toward the sky like the pyramids or Stonehenge, but one that plunged down into the earth, a sacred world hidden in darkness, designed with remarkable care and vision. The name Hypogeum itself means underground in Greek, and it is a fitting word because this entire complex was hewn from living rock. The people who built it used only stone and bone tools, yet they managed to cut through Malta's limestone to create a sanctuary that reaches down 3 levels. It is estimated that construction began around the year 3600 before Christ, and continued to be used for more than 1,000 years. That makes it older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge in England, and one of the very first monumental temple structures ever created by human beings. The fact that it still survives today after 5 millennia is in itself an astonishing testimony to the skill and persistence of its builders. Walking into the Hypogeum feels like entering another world, a world deliberately shaped to separate those inside from the ordinary sunlight and landscape above. The first level of the complex, closest to the surface, seems more rudimentary, as though it began as natural caves that were expanded and then reshaped. But as one moves deeper, the architecture becomes more refined and astonishing. The second level reveals curved walls, smoothly finished surfaces, and carved features that suggest the builders were imitating their above-ground temples in stone. One can see false doorways cut into the walls, a symbol that in many ancient cultures represented a passageway to the spirit world. There are also corbelled ceilings, curved in such a way as to echo the structures that were made of timber and mud brick above the ground. These architectural illusions carved into solid stone show that the builders were not just digging shelters, but were creating symbolic sacred spaces, where form carried meaning and design carried messages about life, death, and eternity. The Hypogeum is also decorated with remarkable artwork. In some chambers, red ochre spirals and circular patterns are painted onto the walls, swirling designs that may have represented cycles of life, the sun, or the eternal journey of the soul. Spirals have been found in many Neolithic sites, but the ones in the Hypogeum are particularly striking because they are preserved underground, shielded from the weather. One of the most famous painted chambers is known as the Oracle Room. This chamber is small and narrow, but its acoustics are astonishing. A simple chant or voice spoken inside can resonate deeply throughout the whole structure, creating echoes that amplify sound in a way that seems almost magical. Some researchers believe this chamber was used for rituals where sound played a central role, perhaps chants, prayers, or ceremonies that connected the people with the unseen world of spirits and gods. Even modern visitors who have had the rare chance to stand there describe the acoustic effect as otherworldly, as though the chamber itself responds to the human voice. The Hypogeum was not only a temple but also a burial place. Thousands of human remains were found inside, some of them buried with artifacts such as pottery, stone beads, and carved figurines. These burials suggest that the Hypogeum was a collective tomb, where the dead were placed together in the sacred underground space. To the people of that time, death may not have been seen as an end but as a transformation, a passage into another form of existence. By burying their dead in such a carefully constructed and sacred space, the builders were perhaps ensuring that the spirits of their loved ones had safe passage into the afterlife. The idea of returning to the womb of the earth may have been part of their belief, with the underground chambers serving as both temple and tomb, a place of rebirth as well as death. Among the most mysterious discoveries in the Hypogeum was a small figurine often called the Sleeping Lady. This carved figure shows a woman reclining on her side, resting on a couch or bed, with her body plump and her eyes closed in serene slumber. She is not carved as an idealized goddess of beauty, but as a real, rounded woman with folds of flesh, suggesting abundance, fertility, and life. Scholars have debated whether she represents a goddess, a priestess, or simply an idealized symbol of death and rebirth. Some believe she embodies the Great Mother, the ancient goddess of fertility worshipped across many early cultures, while others see her as an individual figure laid to eternal rest. Either way, she shows us that art and symbolism were central to the Hypogeum, and that the people who carved this underground temple were deeply concerned with mysteries of life, death, and continuity. The construction of the Hypogeum remains one of the greatest puzzles of prehistory. How did a community of Neolithic farmers, without metal tools or wheels, manage to cut through solid rock to create chambers as large as 9 meters long and 6 meters wide? The stone is limestone, which is softer than granite but still requires immense effort to remove with only stone hammers and antler picks. The builders must have planned carefully, organising labour over generations to slowly hollow out the stone. Some estimates suggest that hundreds of workers over many years would have been required to complete the deeper levels. The precision of the walls and the smoothness of the surfaces suggest not just labour, but skill, perhaps handed down by master builders who knew how to shape the stone. As one descends into the lower levels of the Hypogeum, the atmosphere changes. The third level, which lies deepest, appears more unfinished, with storage pits and rougher walls. Some archaeologists believe this level may have been used primarily for storage of grain or water, while others suggest it was never completed. The presence of deep pits and silos cut into the floor has led some to believe that the Hypogeum also served practical as well as ritual purposes, perhaps as a safe underground reservoir in times of drought or conflict. Yet the overall design, with its careful alignment and decoration, suggests that its main purpose was spiritual, not practical. When the Hypogeum was excavated in the early 20th century, archaeologists uncovered more than 7,000 human skeletons. These remains offered a window into the lives of the ancient Maltese people. The bones showed that these people were shorter on average than modern populations, and some skulls displayed unusual elongation. In fact, a number of elongated skulls found at the site sparked great speculation and controversy. Some suggested they were deliberately shaped, as in other ancient cultures, while others believed they represented a natural genetic trait. Unfortunately, many of these skulls were lost or misplaced during the 20th century, adding an air of mystery to the story. The Hypogeum is often compared with the above-ground megalithic temples of Malta, such as Hagar Kim and Nazca. Those temples, built with massive stone blocks, were clearly visible monuments in the landscape, celebrating the presence of the sacred in the open air. The Hypogeum, on the other hand, represents the hidden, the inward, the underworld. It is as though the Maltese people of that era sought to honour the divine both in the light of the sun and in the depths of the earth. Above-ground temples face the sky, perhaps dedicated to solar worship and fertility, while the underground temple represented the womb of the earth, the hidden world of the dead, and the mysteries beyond life. Together, these monuments form a complete expression of a worldview that saw the sacred in every part of existence. The engineering of the Hypogeum also reveals advanced understanding of acoustics and space. The so-called oracle room, as mentioned earlier, is one of the most fascinating examples. If someone stood in that room and spoke in a low voice, the sound would echo throughout the entire complex. This could have been used to dramatic effect in rituals, making a priest's voice seem to come from everywhere at once. To the people participating in such ceremonies, this must have felt like a divine presence responding to their prayers, an unseen voice reverberating from the walls of the earth itself. Modern scientists who have studied the acoustics found that the chamber amplifies frequencies between 110 and 130 Hz, which is close to the range of the human male voice. This suggests that the effect was not accidental, but carefully designed to enhance the ritual experience. The Hypogeum also demonstrates the ability of Neolithic people to coordinate large communal projects. Building such a complex required not only tools and skill, but also social organisation. Entire communities must have participated in the construction, providing food, labour and support. This implies a level of leadership and religious authority that could inspire or command people to dedicate immense time and energy to a sacred project. The rituals and burials that took place in the Hypogeum would have reinforced communal identity, uniting people through shared belief in the sacred power of the underground temple. For modern visitors, the Hypogeum offers a rare chance to step directly into a Neolithic world. Unlike ruins above ground, which are often weathered and altered by time, the underground chambers preserve the original surfaces, textures, and decorations much as they were thousands of years ago. The sense of entering a space designed so long ago, and yet still so perfectly intact, is overwhelming. Because of its delicate preservation, access today is strictly limited. Only a small number of people are allowed to enter each day, and they must book long in advance. Inside, lighting is dim, humidity is controlled, and photography is restricted, all to protect the fragile ancient artwork and carvings. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the treasures of human history. It stands as a reminder that even in prehistoric times, long before written records or large kingdoms, people were capable of extraordinary feats of imagination, organisation, and artistry. The fact that a small island community in the middle of the Mediterranean could produce such a monument shows that the human drive to connect with the sacred is universal and timeless. The Hypogeum is not just an archaeological site, it is a journey into the minds and beliefs of people who lived 5,000 years ago, people whose names we will never know, but whose vision continues to inspire awe. The mysteries of the Hypogeum remain unsolved. We still do not know exactly how the builders achieved their precision with such primitive tools. We do not know the full meaning of the spiral decorations or the rituals performed in the echoing chambers. We do not know why they chose to carve so deeply into the earth rather than build above it, and we do not know what ultimately happened to the people who created this underground masterpiece. But what we do know is that they left behind a place unlike any other, a place where architecture, art, religion, and community came together in the depths of the earth, leaving behind a silent but powerful message that still speaks across the millennia. The Moai quarry at Rano Raraku on Easter Island is one of the most haunting and mysterious places in the entire world, a site where time itself seems to have paused thousands of years ago. This quarry, carved into the slopes of an extinct volcanic crater, holds hundreds of giant stone statues, some standing upright, some lying on their sides, some half buried in the earth, and many still half finished, abandoned in the very rock from which they were being shaped. These massive stone figures, known as Moai, are among the most iconic images of Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as the local people call it. What makes Rano Raraku especially fascinating is that it is not simply a place where statues were carved. It is a place that feels like a frozen workshop, a grand open-air gallery where one can almost hear the echoes of ancient chisels and see the ghostly silhouettes of carvers moving along the cliff faces. The quarry raises endless questions about how these colossal figures were created, why so many were left unfinished, and what deeper meaning the Moai held for the people who laboured so tirelessly to give them form. The Moai statues of Rano Raraku are carved from volcanic tuff, a type of stone that is relatively soft and easier to shape compared to harder basalt. This is why the ancient Rapa Nui people chose this location as the central production site for their statues. Nearly all of the Moai found across the island trace their origins to this quarry. The stone of Rano Raraku has a light grey or brownish colour, and when freshly carved it was soft enough to allow carvers to create precise forms, but once exposed to the air it hardened over time, making the statues durable. The slopes of the volcano are covered with figures in every stage of creation. Some are fully carved and seem almost ready to be transported, others are only partially shaped, with rough outlines visible, while still others are barely begun, with only faint markings to suggest the giant forms that might have emerged if work had continued. Walking among the Moai at Rano Raraku gives a sense of awe and strangeness. Many of the statues appear to rise directly out of the ground, with only their heads visible above the soil. For a long time, visitors thought these were only head statues, but excavations have shown that most of them actually have full bodies buried deep in the earth. Some of these buried Moai are more than 30 feet tall, with massive torsos covered in carvings that were hidden for centuries. The ground around them has shifted and eroded over time, gradually burying the figures so that they look like sentinels staring out silently from the hillside. The sight is eerie and powerful, as if these statues were watching over the land, half submerged in time. The number of Moai at Rano Raraku is astonishing. There are nearly 400 statues scattered around the quarry and its slopes, in addition to the dozens more still attached to the rock where they were being carved. Altogether, the site contains almost half of all the Moai ever created. The sheer scale of production raises many questions. Why were so many statues made? Why were so many left unfinished? Did the ancient carvers run out of time, or did something catastrophic interrupt their work? Some believe that the island's society collapsed under the pressure of environmental decline, deforestation, and conflict, forcing the people to abandon their great statue-making project. Others think that the quarry was simply a place of continuous production, with statues being carved one after another for generations, and what we see today is simply the result of work that was never fully completed because time moved on. The methods used to carve the Moai at Raraku remain a subject of deep curiosity. Ancient carvers did not have metal tools, wheels, or advanced machinery. They worked with handheld chisels made from harder volcanic rock, carefully shaping the soft tuff. The process of creating a single Moai could have taken many months or even years. Carvers would first outline the statue directly into the rock face, shaping its front surface and sides, while leaving its back still attached to the stone. The Moai would be carved lying flat face up on the slope of the quarry. Once the figure was complete except for the back, the workers would cut channels underneath, eventually freeing the statue from the mountain. After this, the massive figure had to be moved, often several miles, to its intended platform or ahu somewhere else on the island. The transportation of these multi-ton statues remains one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. Some of the unfinished statues at Raraku are among the largest ever attempted. One enormous Moai still attached to the bedrock would have been more than 60 feet tall if completed, weighing hundreds of tons. It is so large that it could never have been transported with the techniques available to the Rapa Nui people, suggesting it was more of a symbolic creation, an attempt to push the limits of possibility. The presence of such colossal, unfinished works shows both the ambition and the limits of the ancient carvers. It is as if they were striving to outdo themselves, reaching ever higher in scale and grandeur, but at some point realizing that the task was beyond their means. The quarry also reveals fascinating details about the artistry and symbolism of the Moai. Many of the statues have elongated noses, deep eye sockets, and heavy brows, giving them a stern, almost divine expression. Some of the buried Moai discovered at Raraku have intricate carvings on their backs, including petroglyphs of birdmen and other figures tied to the island's later religious traditions. This shows that the Moai were not just simple statues but were connected to deeper spiritual beliefs, linking them to both the ancestors and the gods. The quarry itself may have been seen as a sacred place, a womb of stone from which the Moai were born, before being transported to their ceremonial platforms to watch over the people and the land. The half-finished statues scattered across the quarry spark endless imagination. It is as though the carvers simply dropped their tools and walked away one day, leaving everything as it was. Some Moai are only roughed out with barely recognizable shapes, while others are nearly complete, needing only the final touches. The reasons for their abandonment could be many. Perhaps wars between clans disrupted the work. Perhaps a sudden shortage of trees needed for transport halted the process. Perhaps famine and hardship forced the people to focus on survival rather than monumental art. Or perhaps, as some researchers suggest, the carving of Moai was never meant to stop. It was a continuous tradition, and what we see today is simply the natural state of a workshop frozen in time because the culture changed before the work could be finished. The quarry also gives clues about the immense labour force that must have been involved in statue making. Carving and transporting hundreds of Moai would have required not just skilled artisans, but also to organise teams of labourers, leaders to coordinate efforts, and a social system that could support such large-scale work. This suggests that at its height, Easter Island had a complex and structured society, capable of mobilising resources for shared religious and cultural goals. The unfinished Moai at Raraku remind us that these people dedicated enormous energy and creativity to their statues, seeing them as essential to their way of life. The atmosphere of Raraku is unlike any other archaeological site. Walking through the slopes, one feels surrounded by silent giants, each with its own story. The unfinished Moai, still lying in the rock, look like sleeping beings waiting to awaken. The upright statues, half buried in the earth, look like guardians peering into eternity. The scattered tools and rough outlines suggest a place of endless work and devotion. It is both a workshop and a cemetery, a place of creation and abandonment, a reminder of human ambition and limitation. The Moai quarry at Raraku also raises broader questions about human history. How did an isolated community on a small island in the middle of the Pacific create such monumental art? How did they move these enormous figures without the help of wheels or draft animals? Why did they invest so much energy into carving statues rather than other forms of infrastructure? These questions continue to puzzle archaeologists, historians, and visitors alike. The unfinished statues, in particular, seem to hold secrets about the process that we may never fully uncover. In addition to the mysteries of their creation, the Moai at Rano Raraku carry a sense of tragedy. The quarry shows both the heights of creativity and the sudden halt of a tradition. The statues left behind seem to whisper of dreams cut short, of a people who poured their strength into stone but were eventually unable to continue. The image of half-carved giants stuck forever in the hillside is haunting, a symbol of both human greatness and human fragility. The landscape itself adds to the sense of mystery. The quarry lies within the crater of a volcanic mountain, surrounded by grassy slopes and distant views of the ocean. The natural setting enhances the feeling that the Moai are part of the earth itself, born from stone and soil. The contrast between the unfinished statues, lying still in the quarry, and the completed ones that stand proudly on platforms across the island, tells a story of movement, of transformation, and of unfinished journeys. Rano Raraku also shows us how traditions can change. Later generations of Rapa Nui people shifted their religious focus, moving away from the worship of the Moai and toward new spiritual systems like the Birdman cult. This change may have led to the abandonment of the quarry. The unfinished statues thus stand as silent witnesses to a turning point in cultural history, when one era ended and another began. They preserve in stone the moment when an ancient tradition was left behind. The Moai quarry at Rano Raraku remains one of the most evocative sights on Earth, a place where mystery and memory intertwine. The hundreds of statues, finished and unfinished, speak of a people's devotion, creativity, and struggle. They remind us of the power of human imagination to shape stone into living forms, and of the limits that even the greatest efforts can face. The quarry is a museum of stone dreams, frozen in time, forever raising questions about who we are and what drives us to create monuments that outlast our own lives. The Longyou caves in China are among the most puzzling and breathtaking mysteries of the ancient world. They are gigantic caverns carved directly into solid rock, so vast and carefully shaped that they leave both historians and scientists baffled even today. Their existence raises countless questions about the people who made them, the purpose they served, and the extraordinary methods used to achieve such a monumental task. No one knows for sure why they were carved, how they were completed with such precision, or what role they played in the lives of the people who built them. All that is certain is that these caves, which lie in Zhejiang province in eastern China, are not a natural formation at all, but were created entirely by human hands long ago. To stand inside them is to feel the overwhelming power of mystery, the silence of forgotten history, and the sense that we are only scratching the surface of what our ancestors were truly capable of achieving. The Longyou caves were discovered in the year 1986 by chance, when a local farmer decided to drain a small pond that he believed was shallow. He thought that the water might hide a hole or a depression that could be used for farming. To his great surprise, when the water was drained away, it revealed not just an empty space but an immense man-made cavern, carved with straight walls and decorated with strange parallel chisel marks that covered the surfaces in neat patterns. This was not a natural cave, nor was it something recent. It was the work of ancient builders who had cut directly into the hard sandstone. Over time, more such caverns were found nearby, each one vast in size and seemingly interconnected in terms of design, though not physically connected by tunnels. Altogether, nearly 24 of these caves have been identified, with at least several of them open for viewing today. Each cavern is astonishing in scale. Some reach heights of nearly 100 feet, while others stretch across areas the size of several basketball courts combined. The sheer volume of rock removed to create just one of these caves is staggering. Experts have calculated that to carve all of them, the builders would have had to remove hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of stone. To do this with the tools available in ancient China, tools made of bronze or iron, without explosives or modern machinery, would have required not only an enormous workforce, but also incredible planning, precision, and organization. Even if thousands of workers had labored day and night, it would still have taken years, perhaps even decades to complete such an endeavour. What makes the caves even more remarkable is their uniformity. The walls, ceilings and pillars are all cut with great precision, and the chisel marks are consistent throughout. Every surface is covered with fine parallel lines carved into the rock, as if the builders wanted to create both a decorative effect and a sign of craftsmanship. The lines run in neat rows, never wavering, as though guided by some standard technique that all the workers followed. This detail is particularly strange because it serves no obvious practical purpose. It is as if the builders went to extra lengths to beautify the caves in ways that go beyond mere functionality. The durability of the caves is another aspect that astonishes modern researchers. These caverns have stood for thousands of years without collapsing. Their ceilings, some of them as high as a modern 10-story building, remain intact despite the immense weight of rock above. No significant erosion or damage has destroyed their structure, which suggests that the builders understood the properties of the stone and carved the caves in such a way as to balance the forces inside. This knowledge of engineering and geology seems far ahead of what we would expect from the time period in which the caves were created, and yet, despite all this evidence of effort and genius, history has left us completely silent about the Longyou caves. Ancient Chinese records are famously detailed, covering dynasties, emperors, wars, construction projects, and even small-scale events in towns and villages. But there is not a single reference to these monumental caverns in any known text. No book, no scroll, no stone inscription tells us who made them or why. This silence is perhaps the greatest mystery of all. How could a project of such magnitude, requiring so many resources and so much labour, leave no trace in the written history of China, a civilization that documented almost everything? The purpose of the caves is a question that has sparked endless speculation. Some suggest that they were storage chambers, perhaps for grain, water or military supplies, but their size and design seem too elaborate for such simple functions. Others think they may have been dwellings or places of shelter, but the sheer scale again makes this explanation unlikely. A few believe they could have served as underground temples or ceremonial halls, where rituals were performed away from the eyes of the outside world. The careful patterns of chisel marks and the symmetry of the interiors do give the caves a sense of artistry that might point towards spiritual or cultural significance. There are also theories that suggest a more practical purpose. Some archaeologists have wondered if the caves were quarries, carved to extract stone for building other monuments. Yet if this were the case, why would the builders leave behind such perfectly formed caverns rather than irregular holes? Why the neat parallel marks on every surface, as if the quarrying itself was turned into an art form? Furthermore, there are no records or evidence of nearby structures that use stone taken from these caves, leaving the quarry theory incomplete. Another curious aspect is the way water behaves inside the caves. Despite being carved into rock and lying close to rivers and ponds, the caves remain largely dry. They are resistant to flooding, and the air inside them feels surprisingly fresh. This suggests that the builders had a deep understanding of ventilation and drainage, again far beyond what we might assume for their time. It is as though these caverns were not just dug out but carefully engineered to last forever. Some researchers have even speculated about astronomical or cosmological purposes. Perhaps the caves were aligned with celestial patterns, or used to track the movements of the heavens. Others think they may have been designed as underground meeting places for elites, or even as a form of hidden city where secrets were kept. The complete lack of evidence, however, makes all these theories little more than guesses. What we can say with certainty is that the Longyou caves demonstrate an astonishing level of human ambition. Imagine the scene thousands of years ago. Hundreds, or perhaps thousands of workers descending into the stone day after day, hammering and chiseling with bronze tools, torches lighting the darkness, the sound of ringing metal echoing off the walls. Dust would have filled the air, ropes and baskets would have carried debris to the surface, and overseers would have shouted orders as the great cavern slowly took shape. To organise such a project, there must have been a powerful leader or community with both the resources and the will to see it through. And yet, for reasons unknown, this entire achievement was swallowed by silence, forgotten as if it had never happened. The Longyou caves also remind us of other great mysteries around the world, such as the pyramids of Egypt, the stone heads of Easter Island, or the megaliths of Baalbek. In each case, ancient people performed feats that seem almost impossible given the tools and knowledge they were believed to have. The caves fit into this pattern of enigmatic wonders that challenge our assumptions about history. Were our ancestors more advanced than we give them credit for? Did they possess knowledge that has since been lost? Or are we simply underestimating the power of human determination and organization? When visitors walk into the Longyou caves today, they often describe a feeling of awe and strangeness. The high ceilings and vast spaces feel cathedral-like, as though the place was built for something sacred. The quiet amplifies every footstep, and the carefully carved walls seem to whisper secrets from the past. The fact that no one knows who built them makes the experience even more surreal. You're standing inside a masterpiece of human effort that has no name, no date, and no story to explain it. It is like entering the mind of a forgotten civilization. Even modern attempts to study the caves face challenges. Measuring the volume of stone removed, analysing the tool marks, and estimating the labour involved can only provide rough figures. For example, some experts have suggested that carving just one of the caves might have required the removal of nearly 100,000 cubic metres of rock, a task that could have taken 1,000 workers at least 5 years of continuous labour with the tools of the time. Multiply that effort across more than 20 caves, and the project becomes almost unfathomable. And yet, there they stand, solid and silent. The discovery of the Longyou caves has also sparked interest among those who lean toward alternative theories of history. Some suggest that the caves might be evidence of lost civilizations with advanced knowledge, or even the work of unknown cultures that predated the rise of dynasties in China. Others propose more speculative ideas, such as the involvement of extraterrestrial beings, pointing to the precision and scale as signs of something beyond human capacity. While mainstream scholars dismiss such claims, the caves remain open to interpretation because no definitive explanation has yet been found. The Longyou caves also highlight the importance of cultural memory. How could something so vast and monumental vanish from the collective memory of a people known for their detailed records? Did a great catastrophe erase the knowledge of their creation? Was it deliberate? Perhaps a decision by rulers or priests to keep the caves secret? Or did the passage of centuries simply bury their story beneath layers of new dynasties, wars, and cultural changes? The absence of any clue makes the mystery even deeper. To stand before the Longyou caves is to stand before a paradox. They are undeniably real, carved with human hands, immense in scale, and enduring through millennia. Yet they are also invisible in history, nameless and forgotten, like a dream preserved in stone. They challenge our sense of certainty about the past and remind us that history is full of gaps, full of silences that may never be filled, and perhaps that is what gives them their greatest power. They are a monument not only to human labour and genius, but also to the enduring mystery of human civilization itself. The Yonaguni monument in Japan is one of the most unusual and fascinating discoveries ever made beneath the sea. It lies in the waters near Yonaguni, which is the westernmost inhabited island of Japan, part of the Ryukyu Islands. What makes this site so striking is that it looks very different from the natural shapes we expect to see under the sea. Instead of being rounded rocks shaped by waves and time, the Yonaguni monument has sharp corners, straight edges, and huge flat surfaces that almost look as if someone cut them with tools. It resembles a stepped pyramid, a series of terraces, and sometimes even a ruined city. Divers who visit the place often describe it as a sunken wonder, like something from a legend, and many people wonder whether it might be the remains of an ancient man-made structure, rather than just a natural rock formation. This question has sparked endless debates among scientists, archaeologists, geologists, and explorers for more than 30 years, and it continues to stir imagination today. The story of the Yonaguni monument began in the year 1986. A local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was exploring the waters off Yonaguni Island. He was not searching for anything mysterious at the time. In fact, he was looking for good spots to watch hammerhead sharks, because Yonaguni's waters are famous for these large and powerful creatures. During one of his dives, however, he came across something unexpected. Lying about 26 meters below the surface, he saw an enormous rock formation that did not look like other sea rocks. It had the shape of flat platforms, stair-like steps, and large straight walls. The more he looked, the more it seemed as if the place had been designed with intention. He brought the discovery to the attention of scientists, and soon it became one of the most talked about mysteries in Japan. The size of the monument is impressive. It stretches nearly 150 meters long and more than 70 meters wide. In some places it rises about 25 meters from the seabed. Imagine a massive stone pyramid sunk beneath the ocean, large enough that dozens of divers can explore it at once, each one swimming along wide terraces or walking their hands along long straight walls that look like corridors. The entire formation is carved from a single mass of sandstone and mudstone, and its geometric appearance gives the impression that it might once have been built by human hands, though this point is still hotly debated. When divers describe the features of Yonaguni, they often use words that belong more to architecture than geology. For example, there are wide flat platforms that look like courtyards, straight staircases that lead up to higher terraces, and huge blocks that resemble carved pillars. Some parts even look like gateways or entrances. One area has been nicknamed the Stairway to Heaven, because it looks like a perfect flight of steps climbing up toward the surface of the sea. Another section is sometimes called the Terrace, as it resembles the flat farming terraces seen in mountainous regions. There are also long straight channels that look like roads or pathways, and even what some people claim to be carvings of animals or symbols, though these are more controversial. For many people, seeing the Yonaguni monument underwater feels like entering a lost world. It is easy to imagine that it could once have been a city before being swallowed by the ocean. Some compare it to the legend of Atlantis, the mythical sunken city described by the Greek philosopher Plato. Others think it could be connected to Japanese myths of ancient kingdoms that vanished beneath the waves. Local legends from the Ryukyu Islands speak of ancient civilizations and strange structures, and some people believe the Yonaguni monument could be proof that such stories hold some truth. Scientists, however, have been divided from the beginning. On one side, there are geologists who argue that the formation is completely natural. They say the monument is made of sandstone, which naturally breaks into rectangular shapes because of how it splits along joints and fractures. Over thousands of years, underwater currents and tectonic activity could have shaped these rocks into the terraces and steps we see today. According to this view, there is nothing unusual about Yonaguni except that it happens to look like something man-made, a coincidence of natural processes that trick the eye into seeing architecture. On the other side are those who believe the monument is indeed artificial, or at least modified by humans. Among them is Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyu. Kimura has studied the site for many years and believes it is more than just a natural rock formation. He has pointed out features that, in his opinion, suggest human work, such as straight-cut edges, right-angled corners, and what look like carvings of animals, including a horse-like figure. He has even suggested that the site could be more than 5,000 years old, possibly dating back to a time before the last great rise in sea levels, which submerged many coastal areas. If Kimura and those who share his view are correct, the implications are enormous. It would mean that a highly organized civilization existed in Japan thousands of years ago, long before recorded history mentioned such societies. It would suggest that these people had advanced knowledge of stone cutting and construction, and that they built monumental structures that later sank beneath the waves. This would completely change what we know about early Japanese history and the development of human civilization in East Asia. Skeptics, however, remain unconvinced. They argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and so far no tools, artifacts, or remains of human activity have been found at Yonaguni. Without clear evidence of human presence, it is hard to prove that the monument is anything more than a natural rock formation shaped by geological forces. Furthermore, many geologists explain that the patterns of fractures in sandstone often create flat surfaces and sharp edges that look artificial but are not. For example, in other parts of the world, natural formations like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland or the basalt columns of Iceland also look as though they were carved by hand, when in reality they were formed by cooling lava. Despite this debate, the Yonaguni monument continues to fascinate both scientists and the public. Divers travel from all over the world to see it with their own eyes, drawn by the mystery and the chance to explore what feels like a sunken temple. Photographs and videos of the site circulate widely, fueling speculation about lost civilizations and forgotten histories. The monument has even appeared in television documentaries about ancient mysteries, often presented alongside other unexplained sites such as the Pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge in England, and Machu Picchu in Peru. The site also raises broader questions about human history and our relationship with the sea. We know that during the last ice age, which ended about 12,000 years ago, sea levels were much lower than today. Large areas that are now underwater were once dry land where people lived, hunted and built settlements. When the ice sheets melted, sea levels rose by more than 100 meters, flooding coastlines around the world. Many ancient sites could have been drowned in this process, leaving little trace for us to find. The Yonaguni monument, if it is indeed man-made, could be one of those lost places, a relic of a time when humans lived in regions that are now deep below the sea. Even if the monument is natural, it still inspires a sense of wonder. Nature itself can sometimes create forms that seem intentional, reminding us how powerful geological forces can be. The way water, wind, and time shape stone can produce landscapes that are almost architectural, blurring the line between what is built and what is formed. In the case of Yonaguni, the beauty lies in this very uncertainty. Whether it is a forgotten city or a masterpiece of nature, it invites us to look closer, to ask questions, and to imagine stories about our past. Over the years, different theories have been suggested about what the monument might represent if it is man-made. Some people think it could have been a ceremonial or religious site, like a temple or pyramid built to honor gods or spirits. Others suggest it might have been a fortress or palace belonging to a powerful ruler. A few even imagine that it was a harbor or port, with the flat terraces serving as docks for ships. There are also wild ideas that link the site to extraterrestrials or lost continents like Mu or Lemuria, though these are more in the realm of myth than science. The Japanese government has not taken an official position on the monument, partly because of the lack of solid evidence for human involvement. This leaves the mystery open, which in turn allows the site to live on in imagination and speculation. Tourists who visit Yonaguni often combine diving at the monument with the thrill of seeing hammerhead sharks, making the island a popular spot for both mystery seekers and wildlife enthusiasts. The monument also connects deeply with cultural ideas about lost civilizations. Around the world, there are countless stories of ancient lands swallowed by the sea, from Atlantis in the west to stories in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. These tales may come from memories passed down from the time when rising seas really did drown human settlements after the Ice Age. Yonaguni, lying hidden beneath the waters, feels like a physical echo of those legends, a place where myth and reality touch. As divers swim over the stone steps, glide past the tall walls, and peek into shadowy corners, they cannot help but feel they are exploring something greater than themselves. The silence of the sea, broken only by the sound of bubbles rising, makes the experience dreamlike. The monument stands there, massive and unmoving, as it has for thousands of years, keeping its secrets. Perhaps one day, new technology or discoveries will give us clearer answers about its origin. For now, it remains one of the great mysteries of the deep, a reminder of how much of our world still lies hidden, waiting to be understood. The Yonaguni monument also challenges our sense of time. If it is natural, it shows us the power of geological processes working over millions of years to shape stone into patterns that resemble human design. If it is artificial, it tells us that humans thousands of years ago may have been far more capable than we thought, building massive structures long before the civilizations we normally credit with such achievements. Either way, the site forces us to expand our imagination and reconsider the boundaries between history and prehistory, between nature and culture. It is also worth reflecting on how discoveries like Yonaguni stir curiosity, not only about the past, but also about the future. Humanity is still at the beginning of exploring the oceans, with most of the seafloor remaining unmapped and unknown. If such a striking site can exist in shallow waters off Japan, what other wonders might lie hidden in deeper seas? There could be countless natural marvels and perhaps even traces of ancient human activity that remain undiscovered. The monument, then, is not just a mystery of the past, but also a call to explore further, to seek new knowledge beneath the waves. When we look at the Yonaguni monument, we are reminded of the delicate balance between certainty and mystery. Science seeks evidence, measurement, and explanation. Imagination seeks stories, myths, and meaning. In this underwater formation, both meet. We can measure its size, map its shape, and analyse its rock, yet we still feel the pull of questions that have no easy answer. Was it carved by hands thousands of years ago? Or is it a coincidence of nature, beautiful in its accidental resemblance to human design? Each diver who visits the monument must form their own opinion, and that personal encounter with the unknown is part of what makes Yonaguni so special. For the people of Yonaguni Island, the monument has become part of their cultural identity. It attracts visitors, brings recognition, and links them to a mystery that is known across the world. The fishermen, divers, and locals who live on this far western edge of Japan carry with them the story of the monument, passing it on to curious travellers and researchers. In this way, the monument is not just stone under the sea, it is also a living story, shaping human imagination and community in the present. And so, the Yonaguni monument stands as a powerful symbol. It is a place where stone, sea, and story meet. It may be natural or artificial, or perhaps a blend of both, where nature created the base and humans added their touch. Whatever the truth, it is a reminder that the world still holds mysteries beyond our reach, that our past may be deeper and stranger than we know, and that even in an age of satellites and technology, the oceans still keep secrets from us. As long as it remains unexplained, the monument will continue to fascinate, inspire, and draw people into the waters off Yonaguni, where terraces and pyramids lie silent beneath the waves, whispering of forgotten times. Tiwanaku in Bolivia is one of those places that feels like a dream carved into the earth, a place that raises more questions than answers the longer one studies it. It is not just a city made of stone, but a silent story that speaks of an age long before our own, when human beings, for reasons we can still only guess, chose to build something that would outlast centuries of time, weather, and change. To look upon the ruins today is to look into a puzzle that scholars, explorers, and dreamers have tried to piece together for centuries, and yet it continues to resist complete explanation. Tiwanaku is more than an ancient city. It is a riddle written in stone, aligned with the stars and wrapped in the mysteries of a lost world. The first thing that stirs the mind about Tiwanaku is its location. It sits high in the Bolivian Andes, close to Lake Titicaca, a lake that itself carries myths about being the cradle of life and of gods who emerge from its waters to teach humanity. Tiwanaku lies nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, in a place where the air is thin, the winds are sharp, and the land is harsh. This makes its very existence a wonder, for why would a great city have risen in such a challenging place? To climb to such heights is not easy even with modern equipment, and yet thousands of years ago people not only lived here but shaped massive stones into temples and monuments with precision that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, what we think ancient people were capable of. The air at that altitude leaves one breathless, but the stones of Tiwanaku leave one speechless. Archaeologists believe Tiwanaku was already thriving more than 1,500 years ago, perhaps even much earlier. Some estimates suggest it might have been founded around the 1st century of our era, and others claim it could have roots stretching back even further, possibly to 10,000 years before today. The disagreements show how difficult it is to fix the age of the site, especially because it was abandoned long before written records could tell us its story. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the people living in the region already regarded Tiwanaku as the work of ancient giants, or even gods, who had once ruled the land. The ruins were old even then, and no one could say for certain how or why they had been built. That aura of mystery has never faded. The city was not just a cluster of stone blocks, it was a sacred and astronomical centre, a place where the earth and the heavens met. Many of the structures are aligned with the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if the builders wanted their city to be a calendar as much as a home. The most famous example of this is the Sacsayhuaman temple, a large rectangular enclosure whose walls and gateways are set in such a way that the rising and setting of the sun during solstices and equinoxes can be tracked. Imagine the people of Tiwanaku standing within those walls, watching the sun emerge on the horizon, knowing exactly where it would rise and set at certain times of the year. For them, the city was not simply a place of stone, but a living clock tied to the heartbeat of the cosmos. Among the stones of Tiwanaku lies the Gate of the Sun, one of the most striking pieces of ancient craftsmanship on Earth. It is a massive single block of andesite stone, carefully carved and placed upright, with a doorway cut into its centre. Across its upper portion runs a detailed frieze showing a godlike figure surrounded by smaller winged beings, perhaps attendants or spirits. The figure, often called the staff god, holds two staffs or sceptres and is thought to represent a sky deity, maybe even Viracocha, the great creator god of Andean myths. Some believe the gate was part of a larger calendar system, recording cycles of time not only for agriculture, but perhaps for longer cosmic periods. To think of ancient people carving such meaning into a single monolith, weighing many tons, is to wonder how they saw time and the universe in ways far grander than mere survival. The stones themselves whisper their own secrets. Some of them are so large that one struggles to imagine how they were moved without modern machines. Blocks weighing more than 100 tons were cut, shaped, transported, and set into place with astonishing accuracy. Many have interlocking joints, carved in complex shapes that fit together like giant three-dimensional puzzles. These joints would have made the structures not only strong, but also resistant to earthquakes, which are common in the Andes. The skill is so advanced that some scholars say the techniques resemble those seen at the Inca city of Cusco and at Machu Picchu, yet Tiwanaku predates the Incas by centuries. Others go further and suggest that the precision seems almost machine-made, though of course no evidence of such technology survives. The question lingers, how did they do it? Lake Titicaca itself seems tied to Tiwanaku in both myth and function. It is believed that the builders quarried many of the stones on the lake's distant shores and then somehow transported them across water and land to the city. The thought of moving blocks weighing tens of tons across miles of terrain without wheels or beasts of burden in such thin air is staggering. One stone, known as the Pumapunku block, is carved with right angles, grooves and holes that appear so precise they could be mistaken for the work of modern tools. Pumapunku, a part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, is often cited as one of the most enigmatic places on Earth. To stand among those perfectly cut stones, some shaped into what look like giant H-shaped blocks, is to stand before something that feels out of time. Tiwanaku was not just stone and sky, but also life and people. At its height, it is believed the city may have supported tens of thousands of residents, with a surrounding region that was home to hundreds of thousands more. These people were not simply farmers scratching a living from poor soil. They developed sophisticated agricultural methods, including raised fields and canals, which allowed them to thrive in the harsh high-altitude climate. They grew potatoes, quinoa, and other crops adapted to the cold, and they raised llamas and alpacas for wool, meat, and transport. The fields, seen from above, may have appeared as extensions of the city's sacred geometry, linking the life of the people with the patterns of their gods. Religion and ritual were central to Tiwanaku. The city's temples and monuments suggest it was a place of pilgrimage, where people came to worship, to observe the heavens, and to connect with the divine. The semi-subterranean temple, for example, is a sunken courtyard surrounded by walls into which hundreds of stone faces are carved. Each face is different, some with features that resemble distant peoples, as if the temple was meant to represent the unity of all humanity or the diversity of the world. Visitors stepping into this space might have felt as though they were entering the womb of the earth, surrounded by ancestors and spirits watching from every side. What adds to the fascination is how Tiwanaku seems to have radiated influence across a wide region. Archaeological evidence shows that its art and culture spread through much of the Andes, suggesting it was a powerful center of trade, politics, and religion. Pottery, textiles, and stonework bearing Tiwanaku styles have been found far beyond its core, hinting at a network of connections that reached across mountains and valleys. Some call it the first true empire of the Andes, a predecessor to the Incas, whose greatness is often more widely remembered. But if the Incas were the children of the Andes, Tiwanaku may have been its parent, and yet, for all its grandeur, Tiwanaku eventually fell silent. Around the year 1000, long before the Spanish conquest, the city was abandoned. The reasons are still debated. Some suggest climate change, perhaps a long drought, made agriculture impossible and drove the people away. Others say internal conflict or invasion brought about its fall. Whatever the cause, the once thriving city became a ghost of stone, left to the winds of the Altiplano. By the time the Incas rose to power centuries later, Tiwanaku was already a sacred ruin, a place of myths rather than of rulers. The mystery of Tiwanaku lies not only in its stones but in its unanswered questions. Who were the people who built it? How did they achieve such precision without writing, wheels, or iron tools? Why did they align their city with the stars? And what knowledge did they hold about the cycles of the heavens? Knowledge that we are only beginning to rediscover with modern science. The site continues to challenge historians, archaeologists and astronomers alike. It is as if the stones are saying, "We knew something that you have forgotten." Even today, standing at Tiwanaku feels otherworldly. The vast plain stretches in all directions, the air is clear and thin, and the ruins rise like fragments of a dream. The Gate of the Sun casts its shadow across the courtyard, and one can imagine ancient priests watching the sky, marking the movements of the sun, the moon, and perhaps planets too. The carved faces in the semi-subterranean temple stare out with silent wisdom, their stone eyes reflecting centuries of wind and light. And the Pumapunku blocks lie scattered like pieces of a cosmic jigsaw puzzle, daring us to guess their original shape and purpose. Legends continue to wrap around Tiwanaku like mist. Some say it was built by giants, others by gods, and some even suggest travellers from beyond our world played a role. While such ideas may not satisfy the strict eye of science, they show how deeply Tiwanaku stirs the imagination. It is a place that invites wonder, where myth and history meet in a dance of possibility. Even the most careful scholars admit that much remains unknown, and perhaps that is part of Tiwanaku's power. It refuses to give up all its secrets. As the sun sets over the Altiplano, turning the stones of Tiwanaku golden, one can feel the presence of those who once lived, prayed, and dreamed here. Their voices are gone, but their work endures, speaking across centuries with a message we still struggle to understand. Tiwanaku is not only a ruin of the past, but a mirror for humanity, reminding us of what we can build, what we can lose, and what mysteries we still carry with us. Petra in Jordan is one of the most astonishing and mysterious places ever created by human hands. A city carved into the red sandstone cliffs of the desert, with such skill and beauty that even today, after thousands of years, people cannot help but wonder how it was done. To stand before the monumental facades of Petra is to feel the power of history, to sense the spirit of an ancient people who transformed stone into living art. It is not simply a collection of ruins or a forgotten settlement. It is a masterpiece of human imagination, engineering and artistry that has survived through the centuries despite wind, rain, earthquakes, and the shifting sands of time. The first impression one has of Petra is unforgettable. Travellers approach the site through a narrow canyon known as the Sick, a winding pathway hemmed in by towering cliffs that rise as high as buildings. This passageway is like a dramatic curtain, hiding what lies ahead and slowly building suspense. As one walks through the Sick, the sunlight filters down in slivers, striking the red and pink sandstone walls in ways that make the rock glow with warm colours. Then, at the end of the passage, there is a sudden break in the stone, and the traveller is faced with one of the most iconic images of the ancient world, the treasury, or Al-Khazne. Its grand columns, carved directly into the rock face, stand tall and commanding, with intricate decorations that look more like the work of a master sculptor than the product of chisels and hammers. The treasury alone would be enough to make Petra famous, but it is only the beginning of what lies hidden in this forgotten city. The entire city of Petra was carved from the cliffs by the Nabateans, a people whose ingenuity has left scholars both impressed and puzzled. The Nabateans were not as widely known as other ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, the Romans, or the Greeks, but their achievements rivaled those of the greatest empires. They were master builders, skillful traders, and experts in controlling water in a desert environment. Petra was their capital, and through its design and location, it displayed both their wealth and their remarkable ability to adapt to harsh surroundings. It was not a city built with stone blocks stacked upon one another like many others in the world, but a city literally cut out of living rock. Temples, tombs, houses, theatres, and entire avenues were carved with astonishing precision, their details so fine that one wonders how people living so long ago achieved such perfection without modern tools. One of the most striking things about Petra is how alive it feels. even though it is no longer a bustling city. The sandstone cliffs are not a dull grey, but a spectrum of reds, oranges, pinks, and purples that change throughout the day as the sun moves across the sky. Walking among the ruins feels almost like stepping into a painting, where nature and human craft blend seamlessly together. The rock itself seems to breathe with colour, and the Nabateans use this to their advantage. Their carvings often take advantage of natural striations in the stone, aligning columns and arches so that the natural beauty of the sandstone enhances the architecture. It is as if the city was not just carved into the cliffs, but grew out of them, becoming a part of the very landscape. The Nabateans chose their location wisely. Petra was hidden deep within the mountains, protected by rugged terrain, and accessible only through narrow passes like the Sig. This made it easy to defend, a crucial factor in a world where invasions and raids were common. Yet Petra was not an isolated fortress. It was a hub of trade. The Nabateans controlled important caravan routes that brought goods from Arabia, Egypt, and even as far as India and China. Frankincense, spices, textiles, and precious stones passed through Petra, making it a place of immense wealth. The grandeur of the city's architecture reflects this prosperity. The treasury, for instance, may have been a tomb for a king, but it also symbolized the Nabateans' power and cultural sophistication, blending influences from Greek, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian styles. Exploring further into Petra reveals an entire world carved into the cliffs. There are hundreds of tombs, each with its own unique facade, some decorated with intricate carvings of columns, niches, and statues. The Nabateans placed great importance on honouring their dead, and their tombs reflect both religious beliefs and social hierarchy. The largest and most elaborate tombs were reserved for the elite, while simpler ones lined the cliffs in rows like apartments of eternity. But Petra was not only a necropolis, it was a living city. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of houses, marketplaces, temples, and even a vast theatre that could seat thousands of people. Imagine sitting in that theatre 2,000 years ago, carved entirely into the mountainside, watching performances as the desert wind swept through the valleys. It would have been a breathtaking experience. Perhaps one of the most impressive aspects of Petra is its water system. The Nabateans lived in a desert where rainfall was scarce and unreliable, yet they managed to supply their city with enough water to support a large population. They carved channels into the rock to direct water from seasonal streams and flash floods into reservoirs and cisterns. These channels were engineered with such precision that they could carry water for long distances without significant loss. They even built underground storage systems to preserve water for dry periods. This mastery of water management allowed Petra to flourish in a place where most cities would have withered. It also made Petra a vital stop for caravans, as traders knew they could rest and resupply there. As time passed, Petra became known not just as a centre of commerce, but also as a marvel of architecture. Travellers and chroniclers in the ancient world wrote about its wonders, and even after it was eventually abandoned and forgotten by much of the outside world, its legend remained. For centuries, only the Bedouin tribes knew of its existence, guarding its secrets until the early 19th century, when it was rediscovered by a European traveller disguised as a local. Since then, Petra has captured the imagination of the world, becoming one of the most visited and admired archaeological sites. Yet even today, many mysteries surround Petra. Scholars debate how exactly the Nabateans carved such detailed monuments with the tools available at the time. Some suggest that they used scaffolding and metal chisels, but even so, the precision and scale are astonishing. How long did it take to carve a facade like the treasury, with its soaring columns and delicate ornaments? Was it decades of work by hundreds of labourers, or did they have techniques now lost to us that allowed them to shape stone more efficiently? The answers remain uncertain, adding to Petra's aura of wonder. Another mystery lies in the purpose of some of its monuments. The treasury is called so because local legends once claimed it hid treasures of kings, but its true function is still debated. Was it a royal tomb, a temple, or something else entirely? Similarly, the monastery, another colossal structure carved high in the cliffs, is so massive that one cannot help but question what role it played in the city. Its interior is surprisingly plain compared to its monumental exterior, suggesting it may have been used for religious gatherings rather than as a tomb. These unanswered questions leave room for imagination, allowing visitors to feel like explorers discovering secrets that have been waiting for thousands of years. The decline of Petra adds another layer of fascination. At its height, it was a wealthy and thriving city, but eventually trade routes shifted and new powers rose in the region. The Romans took control, and while they added their own touches, such as roads and new buildings, Petra's glory slowly faded. Earthquakes damaged its structures, and without constant maintenance, the water systems began to fail. Over time, the city was abandoned, left to the winds and sands. Nature reclaimed it, and the once busy streets fell silent. The fact that so much of Petra has survived despite this neglect is remarkable, a testament to the enduring strength of stone and the skill of the Nabateans. Walking through Petra today is like moving through layers of time. One can imagine the clatter of caravans arriving, the markets buzzing with merchants, the priests conducting rituals in temples, and the mourners visiting the tombs of their ancestors. Then, in the silence of its ruins, one can also sense the centuries of abandonment, the long period when Petra was known only to nomads and travellers who stumbled upon its facades hidden in the cliffs. This duality, between vibrant life and quiet decay, makes Petra one of the most evocative ancient sites in the world. It is also worth reflecting on the cultural blend that Petra represents. The Nabateans were influenced by the civilizations they interacted with through trade, and this is evident in their architecture. The columns and pediments recall Greek and Roman styles, the obelisks and motifs hint at Egyptian influence, and the overall planning reflects Mesopotamian traditions. Yet the Nabateans combine these elements into something uniquely their own, creating a style that is both familiar and entirely original. This blending of cultures makes Petra not just a Jordanian treasure, but a symbol of the interconnectedness of the ancient world. In modern times, Petra has become more than an archaeological site. It has become a symbol of endurance and wonder. It is one of the new 7 wonders of the world, recognized for its universal value to humanity. Visitors from across the globe come to marvel at its facades, walk its ancient streets, and feel the weight of history pressing gently upon their shoulders. Photographs can capture its beauty, but to truly understand Petra, one must stand before its towering monuments, run a hand along the stone worn smooth by centuries, and gaze up at the artistry that has outlasted empires. Petra is more than just a relic of the past. It is a reminder of what human beings are capable of when vision, determination, and artistry combine. In a world often dominated by technology and speed, Petra speaks of patience, of the slow but steady work of carving a dream into reality. It shows that even in the harshest environments, with limited resources, people can create wonders that defy time. The Nabateans may not have left behind written chronicles to tell their story in detail, but through Petra, their voice still speaks across the centuries. It tells us of ambition, creativity, and resilience, qualities that remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The Nazca lines in Peru are among the most mysterious and breathtaking creations ever made by human hands. Spread across a vast desert plain in southern Peru, these gigantic geoglyphs stretch for kilometers, etched into the earth as if carved by some unseen hand. They are so large that they cannot be fully appreciated from the ground. From the desert floor, they may look like long stretches of shallow lines or simple furrows in the soil. Yet when seen from above, whether from a nearby hilltop or in modern times from an airplane, their true beauty and complexity are revealed. Shapes emerge: animals, plants, geometric figures, spirals, and even human-like forms. Patterns that seem designed for the eyes of the gods or for beings in the sky. The question of why they were made, who exactly made them, and what purpose they served still puzzles historians, scientists, and travellers even today, centuries after their creation. The lines are found in the Nazca Desert, a high and dry plateau that stretches over many kilometres. The region is harsh, barren, and unforgiving, but it is precisely this dry and stable climate that has allowed the lines to survive for so long. Rain is scarce, wind is limited, and erosion happens very slowly. As a result, the markings have remained preserved for over 1,000 years. To make the geoglyphs, the ancient people of Nazca removed the reddish-brown pebbles covering the desert surface and exposed the lighter-coloured soil underneath. By carefully clearing away these dark stones in long straight paths, they created striking contrast that stood out clearly against the desert floor. The lines vary in size. Some are only a few meters across, while others stretch for several kilometers. Taken together, they form hundreds of different figures. Some are straight lines, some form shapes like trapezoids, triangles, or spirals, and others create images of animals such as a hummingbird, a monkey, a spider, a condor, a dog, and even a mysterious figure known as the astronaut, with a round head and raised arm, looking as if it is waving from the desert floor. The scale of the Nazca lines is difficult to grasp without imagining yourself floating above them. From an airplane or drone, the figures appear with astonishing clarity, as if a giant artist sketched them across the desert canvas. The hummingbird, for instance, is about as long as a football field. The monkey has a curling spiral tail and exaggerated fingers. The spider stretches across the plain with impossibly thin legs. Each one is made with such precision that they still appear perfect even after centuries of exposure. The question that naturally arises is how the ancient Nazca people, who had no airplanes or drones, managed to design and create figures that can only be appreciated from above. It seems almost as though they intended their work to be seen from the sky. The Nazca civilization flourished between about 500 years before the birth of Christ and 600 years after, long before European explorers arrived in South America. They were skilled in agriculture, engineering, and art. They built aqueducts, practiced advanced irrigation techniques, and produced beautiful pottery with detailed designs. Yet the geoglyphs they left behind are their most famous legacy, and also their most mysterious. The desert became their canvas, and they transformed it into something that has baffled the world ever since. Some scholars believe the lines had religious or ceremonial purposes, perhaps connected to the worship of deities related to water and fertility. The desert in which they lived was arid and difficult for farming, so the Nazca people may have sought divine help to ensure rainfall and good harvests. Others think the lines could have served as astronomical markers, aligning with the sun, moon, or stars, and acting as a kind of observatory or calendar carved into the earth. Still others suggest they were pathways for ritual processions, walked upon during sacred ceremonies. What makes the Nazca line so fascinating is that none of these theories has been proven beyond doubt. Even today, experts disagree about their purpose. The mystery keeps the geoglyphs alive in the imagination, inviting endless speculation. Were they messages to the gods, drawn large enough to be seen from the heavens? Were they maps, directions, or symbols for ceremonies? Were they records of the stars and planets? Or could they be something we have not yet thought of at all? The sheer effort required to create them also raises questions. Without modern tools, how did the Nazca people manage to produce such straight lines over such long distances? Some lines run for several kilometers without deviation, as though they were drawn with a giant ruler. One possibility is that they use simple but clever tools, like ropes and wooden stakes, to mark out the shapes. Archaeologists have found traces of such wooden posts at the ends of some lines, which suggests they may have acted as guides. With enough planning, teamwork, and knowledge of geometry, it would have been possible for the Nazca to scale up small drawings into huge earthworks. The fact that the desert surface is stable and uniform also helped them maintain straightness and proportion. Yet even knowing how they might have been made does not take away the awe. Imagine standing in the desert holding a rope tied to a stake and being told to walk in a straight line for hundreds of meters, unable to see the overall shape you're helping to create. Imagine dozens of people working together, each clearing stones from the desert floor without ever seeing the finished figure, trusting only in their leader's instructions. The design would only come alive from above, far beyond the reach of their own eyes. This gives the lines an almost supernatural quality, as though they were not intended for human eyes at all. The mystery deepens when we consider the shapes themselves, the hummingbird delicate and symmetrical with wings spread wide, the monkey with its spiral tail and human-like hands, the spider with its impossibly long legs, perfectly proportioned. Why did the Nazca choose these specific animals and forms? Some scholars suggest they were symbols of fertility or rain. For example, the hummingbird might be linked to flowers and blooming, the monkey to the Amazon rainforest and abundance, and the spider to water and weaving. Others think they may have had astronomical significance. The spider, for instance, may represent the constellation Orion, while the monkey's spiral tail might symbolize the movement of the stars. There are also geometric figures, trapezoids that stretch across the desert, long triangles, spirals, and perfectly straight lines that cut across the plain. Some of these point directly to the horizon, possibly aligning with the rising or setting of the sun at certain times of the year. If so, the lines could have served as a vast calendar, helping the Nazca people mark the seasons for planting and harvesting. In a desert environment where water and crops meant survival, knowing when the rains would come was crucial. Thus, the geoglyphs might have been more than art. They could have been tools for life itself. Over the years, explorers, scientists, and dreamers from around the world have travelled to see the Nazca lines and try to unlock their meaning. In the early 20th century, pilots flying over the desert were among the first to notice the figures from above and realise their full extent. Before airplanes, the lines were almost impossible to appreciate fully, though some hilltops may have offered partial views. When the world learned of them, they quickly became famous as one of the greatest mysteries of ancient times. Some more imaginative theories have been suggested as well. A few have claimed the lines were made for extraterrestrial visitors, landing strips for alien spacecraft, or messages directed at beings from other worlds. While mainstream scholars do not support these ideas, they show how the Nazca lines capture the imagination and inspire people to think beyond the ordinary. The scale and beauty of the figures make them feel otherworldly, and the lack of a clear explanation leaves the room for speculation. What cannot be denied is the incredible dedication and vision of the Nazca people. To create something so vast, enduring, and mysterious required not only skill but also imagination. The desert was their canvas, the earth their paint, and their brushes were nothing more than hands, stones, and ropes. Yet what they produced still amazes the world centuries later. The Nazca lines remind us that ancient civilizations were capable of feats far beyond what we sometimes assume, and that they left behind works of art and meaning that we are still struggling to understand. Walking across the desert today, a visitor might see only stretches of flat land with faint lines running into the distance. But to rise above the desert, to take a small plane and fly over the plain, is to witness something unforgettable. The figures appear one by one, almost as if they were waiting for your eyes to discover them. A monkey waves with outstretched fingers, a giant condor spreads its wings, a hummingbird hovers eternally in the sand. The desert becomes alive with patterns, a silent gallery that can only be seen from the sky. It is no wonder that people continue to be drawn to the Nazca lines, searching for answers and marvelling at their beauty. Even now, new lines are still being discovered. Modern technology, including drones and satellite imagery, has revealed figures that were hidden or faded over time. Each new discovery adds to the puzzle, expanding the world of the Nazca lines and reminding us that we still do not know the full story. As scientists study them, as archaeologists dig deeper, and as travellers gaze in awe from above, the geoglyphs continue to keep their secrets. They are at once a work of art, a mystery, and a message carved into the earth that has lasted for over 1,000 years. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is one of the most extraordinary places ever created by human hands, and to this day it stands as the largest religious monument in the entire world. When people speak of wonders of architecture and imagination, they often mention the pyramids of Egypt or the great temples of ancient Greece, but Angkor Wat belongs in the same circle of greatness, if not higher. It is a monument that is not only massive in size, but also filled with mysteries of symbolism, precision, and alignment with the stars and celestial events. It is not merely a temple, but a mirror of heaven on earth, a place where kings, priests, and ordinary people once believed they could stand between the realm of men and the divine. To tell the story of Angkor Wat is to tell the story of human ambition, of belief, of engineering beyond what seems possible, and of how ancient civilizations saw themselves within the larger cosmos. The Temple of Angkor Wat was built in the 12th century, during the reign of King Sacsayhuaman II. This king ruled over the mighty Khmer Empire, which was at its height of power and wealth. At that time, the Khmer Empire stretched across much of Southeast Asia, including not just Cambodia, but also large parts of present-day Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Sacsayhuaman wanted a monument that would be the pride of his empire, something that would last forever, something that would not just be a palace for his body but also a house for his soul. He wanted a place where his people could worship the gods, but also where the universe itself would be reflected. So he commanded the building of Angkor Wat, a temple unlike any other before it. The sheer size of Angkor Wat is hard to imagine. The entire complex covers more than 400 acres of land, which is larger than many modern cities. The central temple is surrounded by walls, moats and causeways that stretch for miles, all carefully aligned. The moat itself is as wide as a river, nearly 200 meters across, forming a vast rectangle that encircles the temple. When one approaches Angkor Wat from a distance, the temple rises above the flat landscape like a mountain of stone, its towers reaching towards the heavens. In fact, it was deliberately designed to resemble Mount Meru, which in Hindu mythology is the home of the gods and the centre of the universe. For the Khmer people, Angkor Wat was not simply a building, it was a model of the cosmos, an image of divine order made solid in stone. One of the most fascinating things about Angkor Wat is how it was built with such precision. Every stone was cut, transported and placed in a way that seems almost impossible for a civilization without modern machinery. The sandstone blocks used in its construction were quarried from mountains more than 50 kilometers away. These stones were transported through rivers and canals carved into perfect shapes and fitted together without mortar, so tightly that even today it is hard to slide a piece of paper between them. The skill and labour required are beyond comprehension. Some historians have calculated that it would have taken hundreds of thousands of workers many decades to build the temple, and the organisation of such an effort shows how advanced the Khmer civilization truly was. The temple itself is not just impressive for its size, but for its beauty. Walking through Angkor Wat, one is surrounded by carvings that cover nearly every wall, every pillar, every corridor. These carvings tell stories from Hindu mythology, tales of gods and demons, battles between light and darkness, the churning of the cosmic ocean, the adventures of heroes, and the cycle of life and death. One of the most famous carvings is the scene of the churning of the Sea of Milk, which shows gods and demons pulling on a giant serpent wrapped around a mountain, in order to stir the cosmic waters and release the nectar of immortality. This carving stretches for hundreds of feet and is filled with intricate detail. Every figure has expression, movement and character, as if the stone itself has come alive. But Angkor Wat is more than art and architecture. It is also a masterpiece of astronomy. The temple was aligned with celestial events in ways that reveal a deep understanding of the heavens. The central tower, for example, is perfectly positioned so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun rises directly over its peak when viewed from the main entrance. This is not a coincidence, but a deliberate design, a way of connecting the temple with the cycles of the sky. In fact, many scholars believe that the entire temple complex was built as a kind of astronomical calendar, a way of measuring time not only through days and years but through cosmic ages. The number of towers, steps and corridors correspond to cycles described in Hindu cosmology, such as the vast ages of the universe known as yugas. In this sense, Angkor Wat was both a temple for worship and a map of eternity. The alignment with the stars goes even deeper. Studies have shown that the layout of Angkor Wat reflects the constellation of Draco, a serpent-like figure in the night sky, and may also be linked with other constellations sacred to Hinduism. The Khmer builders may have designed the temple to mirror the heavens, so that the gods above and the temple below were connected. Standing in Angkor Wat, especially at dawn or dusk, one feels as if the boundary between earth and sky has been dissolved, and the temple becomes a bridge to the infinite. To understand the scale of what Angkor Wat meant to its people, one must remember that in the 12th century, most of the world was still ruled by small kingdoms, many of which built in wood or mud brick that has long since vanished. But here, in the jungles of Cambodia, rose a monument of stone, larger than any cathedral in Europe, larger than the pyramids of Egypt in terms of area, and filled with symbolism that reaches from the human heart to the stars. Angkor Wat was not only the pride of the Khmer Empire, but a declaration that human beings could touch the divine through creation. The temple also had another purpose, one that was personal to King Sacsayhuaman. It was meant to be his mausoleum, the place where his soul would rest after death. Unlike most Hindu temples which face east towards the rising sun, Angkor Wat faces west, the direction of the setting sun, which in Hindu belief is associated with death and the afterlife. This unusual orientation suggests that the temple was both a house for the gods and a tomb for the king. When the sun set behind the towers of Angkor Wat, it symbolized the passage of the king's spirit into eternity. In this way, the temple became not just a link between heaven and earth, but also between life and death. Over the centuries, Angkor Wat has survived changes of time and faith. After the decline of the Khmer Empire, the temple was not abandoned, but it was transformed. In the 15th century, as Buddhism became the dominant religion of the region, Angkor Wat was converted from a Hindu temple into a Buddhist one. The statues of Hindu gods remained, but new images of the Buddha were added. Pilgrims continued to visit, and monks continued to live in the temple, keeping it alive even as the surrounding city of Angkor fell into ruin. This continuity of use is one reason why Angkor Wat remains so well preserved. Unlike many other ancient monuments that were forgotten and left to crumble, the rediscovery of Angkor Wat by the wider world came in the 19th century, when European explorers and scholars brought news of its wonders to the outside world. Travellers described it in awe, calling it a rival to the greatest monuments of antiquity. Artists sketched its towers rising above the jungle, and writers tried to capture the feeling of walking through its endless corridors and seeing the carvings of gods and demons frozen in stone. Since then, Angkor Wat has become a symbol not only of Cambodia's history but of human creativity as a whole. It is now visited by millions of people every year who come to marvel at its scale and mystery. Yet even with all that is known about Angkor Wat, much remains uncertain. How exactly did the Khmer builders move such enormous stones across rivers and forests? What kind of tools did they use to carve such precise lines into hard sandstone? How did they design alignments so perfect that even today, with the modern instruments, we're astonished by their accuracy? Some scholars suggest that they use simple but clever methods, like bamboo scaffolding, wooden rollers, and measurements based on ropes and shadows. Others believe there may have been knowledge of geometry and astronomy that has since been lost. The truth may never be fully known, but the result speaks for itself, a temple that seems both human and divine. The atmosphere of Angkor Wat is another thing that makes it unique. To walk there at dawn, when the first light of the sun rises behind the towers, is to feel transported into another world. The reflection of the temple in the waters of the moat creates a vision so perfect that it feels like a dream. As the sky turns from darkness to gold, the towers glow as if they are lit from within. The chants of monks echo across the stones, blending with the sound of birds in the trees. It is a moment that connects the modern visitor with the ancient builders, a reminder that the human desire to seek beauty, meaning, and connection with the cosmos is eternal. The carvings and bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat also serve as a kind of library of ancient thought. They tell not only stories of gods, but also the history of the Khmer people. One wall shows a procession of King Sacsayhuaman himself, surrounded by his soldiers, servants, and elephants. Another shows battles with neighbouring kingdoms, carved with such detail that one can see the weapons, armour, and even the expressions of the warriors. These images are not just decorations, they are records of a civilization's beliefs, values, and achievements. Through them, Angkor Wat becomes not just a temple, but a book written in stone. Even the numbers hidden in Angkor Wat carry meaning. Scholars have noted that the dimensions of the temple, the number of steps, the number of towers, all correspond to sacred numbers in Hindu cosmology. The central tower rises to a height of 65 meters, symbolizing the mythical Mount Meru. The galleries represent the ocean surrounding the mountain, and the moat represents the cosmic sea. In every direction, in every measurement, symbolism is present. The builders wanted the temple to be a microcosm of the universe, so that anyone entering its walls would be stepping into a model of creation itself. Today, Angkor Wat is the heart of Cambodia's identity. It appears on the national flag, a rare honour for a monument. For the Cambodian people, it is not only a reminder of their ancestors' greatness, but also a source of pride and resilience, especially after the dark years of war and hardship in the 20th century. It shows that no matter what happens in history, human creativity can endure. The stones of Angkor Wat have stood for nearly 1,000 years, and they will likely stand for many more, a silent witness to the passage of time. Yet, beyond national pride, Angkor Wat speaks to all humanity. It is a place that invites questions as much as it gives answers. Why did people long ago build such massive monuments? Was it only to honour their gods and kings, or was it also to remind themselves of their place in the universe? What does it say about the human spirit that people without machines, without electricity, without modern science, could still build something so precise, so beautiful, and so filled with cosmic meaning? Derinkuyu underground city in Turkey is one of the most astonishing creations left behind by ancient people. A place that looks less like something from human history and more like something from a story of hidden worlds beneath the earth. It is not simply a cave or a carved chamber, but a massive, carefully planned underground city, spreading deep beneath the ground with many levels, winding tunnels, chambers of different shapes and sizes, and vast networks that suggest not just survival, but organised living. It is said to have been able to house thousands of people at once, and when you walk through its dark passages today, you feel a sense of wonder at how such a thing could have been made so long ago with simple tools and with no machines, yet so large and so effective that it could protect entire communities for months or even years. The underground city stretches down many levels, reaching to depths that are hard to imagine being carved entirely by hand. Some say it goes down 11 levels, others say even deeper. What is certain is that it is not a single chamber, but a labyrinth where entire neighbourhoods could exist. There are living quarters, storage rooms for food, stables for animals, wine and oil presses, kitchens with blackened ceilings that show where fires once burned, and long shafts for ventilation that keep fresh air circulating even many metres underground. These shafts are so cleverly placed that the air feels surprisingly fresh, as though the builders understood how to design airflow in a way that would allow thousands of people to breathe easily, even in times of long confinement. Narrow passages and stairways link one level to another, and some are deliberately tightened low, so that only one person could pass at a time, making it easier to defend the city if outsiders tried to invade. Walking through Derinkuyu gives the impression that this was not just a place of refuge, but also a hidden world meant to be lived in for long periods. Imagine families bringing their animals down into the stables, storing grain in special rooms carved into the rock, gathering in communal halls, and children running through the dimly lit corridors. The builders had thought of nearly everything. There are wells that provided water, but the wells were designed so that they could not be poisoned from the surface, suggesting the people knew that enemies might attempt such tricks. There are heavy circular stone doors, some weighing hundreds of kilograms, placed at strategic points along passageways. These doors could be rolled into place to block a corridor completely, making sections of the city secure if attackers ever breached the upper levels. The doors were round, resembling giant millstones, and could only be opened from the inside, which gave the inhabitants a huge advantage in defence. This careful design makes it clear that Derinkuyu was more than a curiosity. It was a fortress, a place where entire populations could hide, survive, and protect themselves. The sheer size of the underground city amazes anyone who thinks about it. Estimates suggest that it could hold at least 20,000 people, along with their animals and supplies. That number is staggering, especially when you realise that it was not just a shelter for a small group, but for entire communities, perhaps whole towns. Imagine 20,000 people vanishing into the earth when danger approached, leaving the surface quiet and empty, while life continued below in a buzzing network of rooms. The scale alone shows that this was no temporary project, but something that took generations of effort, knowledge of stone and earth, and an understanding of how to manage large groups of people in a hidden environment. The rock in which Derinkuyu was carved is called tuff, a type of soft volcanic rock found in Cappadocia. This kind of rock is relatively easy to dig through with simple tools, yet it is also strong enough to hold shape once carved. This balance made it possible for ancient builders to dig wide rooms and long tunnels without them collapsing. Cappadocia's landscape is filled with strange rock formations and many other smaller underground shelters, but Derinkuyu is by far the largest and most elaborate. Some scholars believe that the people who began digging here may have been the Phrygians, an ancient people who lived in Anatolia more than 2,000 years ago, while others think that the first beginnings might have been earlier, with later groups expanding the tunnels into the grand underground city we see today. Over time, different civilizations, from early Christians to Byzantines, are believed to have used and expanded it. each leaving their mark, turning it into a layered history of underground life. One of the most fascinating aspects is how well the underground city was designed to meet human needs. Kitchens had chimneys that carried smoke away so that people could cook without filling the air with choking fumes. Storage rooms were carved to keep food fresh and protected from spoilage. Even animals were accounted for, since people could not survive long underground without their livestock. The stables had troughs and special designs for keeping animals safe and fed. The people who lived here must have carried down sacks of grain, jars of oil, and supplies they would need for months, creating an underground economy of survival. It is not hard to imagine the echo of daily life in the dim light of oil lamps, with children laughing, mothers preparing food, men keeping watch at narrow passageways, and priests or elders perhaps leading prayers or meetings in communal rooms. The underground city also connects with other hidden cities through tunnels that stretch kilometers long. This suggests that Derinkuyu was not alone, but part of a much larger system of underground life in Cappadocia. Some of these tunnels may have been used to escape if one city was attacked, allowing people to flee secretly to another. It makes one think of an entire network of hidden worlds beneath the ground, a civilization within the earth that mirrored the one above. The planning required for such networks speaks of intelligence and long-term vision, not just fear of immediate threats. There is much debate about why such a place was built. Some believe it was mainly for protection against invading armies, as Anatolia was a crossroads of many empires and wars. Others think it may have been to protect against religious persecution, as early Christians are believed to have hidden there during times when they were hunted by Roman authorities. The tunnels and rooms may have served as both refuge and secret places of worship. Still others suggest that the underground city was simply a way of survival in a harsh land, where people needed shelter not just from enemies but also from natural disasters or even extreme climate. The truth may be a mixture of all these reasons, but what is clear is that whoever built it did so with remarkable determination and foresight. One of the most mysterious features of Derinkuyu is the Great Hall with a vaulted ceiling, believed to have been used as a school or perhaps a religious chamber. The shape of the room, larger than others and carefully carved, suggests it was meant for gatherings. Imagine hundreds of people gathered underground, listening to speeches, singing hymns, or learning lessons while hidden from the surface world. This adds a spiritual and cultural layer to the underground city, showing it was not only for hiding but also for living as a complete community with its own rhythm of life. The engineering of the city continues to astonish modern experts. The ventilation shafts, for example, are so numerous and well placed that air flows naturally, making the underground chambers breathable and surprisingly comfortable. In total, it is said there are more than 50 ventilation shafts, some reaching all the way to the surface, cleverly disguised so that outsiders would not notice them. This design kept the city hidden, while still supplying air to thousands of people. The wells too were carefully made, some connected to underground water sources so that the city never ran out of water, even if it was sealed for long periods. It is easy to imagine that when enemies surrounded the land above, the people underground could continue their lives in safety, sustained by food, water, air, and security. The sense of mystery deepens when you realize that many parts of Derinkuyu are still not fully explored. Some tunnels are too narrow or dangerous to enter, and some are believed to extend even farther than what is currently mapped. The idea that more hidden sections remain untouched adds to the allure, as though the underground city still guards its secrets, waiting for future generations to uncover them. Archaeologists working there often find signs of expansions, blocked passages, or unfinished rooms, raising questions about whether the city was abandoned suddenly or used until later centuries. The layers of history are carved not only in the stone but in the silence of those dark corridors, which seem to echo with the lives of people long gone. Derinkuyu also leaves people wondering about the daily atmosphere of living underground. Imagine the flickering light of torches and oil lamps casting shadows on rough stone walls, the low murmur of conversations echoing in corridors, the smells of food cooking in underground kitchens, the bleating of goats or the braying of donkeys in the stables, and the quiet hum of air moving through the shafts. Life underground would have been different from life above, more hushed, more enclosed, but also strangely safe, cut off from the dangers of the surface. For children, it may have felt like an endless maze, a place of adventure. The imagination stretches further when thinking about how such a city was built. The work of carving out chambers, Halls and tunnels from volcanic rock would have taken not just years but centuries. Workers with hammers and chisels working in dim light must have slowly chipped away, hauling stone out, shaping rooms carefully so they would not collapse. Generations of builders may have added to the network, each one expanding deeper or broader until the city reached the incredible size it has today. The labour alone is almost beyond comprehension, yet the result is a masterpiece of hidden architecture, still standing strong after thousands of years. Today, when visitors walk into Derinkuyu, they often feel as though they're stepping into another world, one where time has stopped. The stone walls, the rounded doors, the cool air and the endless passages make it easy to imagine the lives that once filled these empty spaces.